Hey everyone, before we get into the episode today, we wanted to let you know about a very special opportunity.
That's right. We are hiring here at the Command Zone. If you love Magic, if you love Commander, if you've ever dreamed of taking your love of those things and turning them into a career, this is your chance. We are currently hiring for the position of Junior Video Editor, which is a entry-level position. It requires no experience. It only requires that you're a fast learner, a hard worker, and you love Magic and Commander. If that's you, we would love for you to apply. Go down in the show notes. There will be a job posting there. Just click, upload your cover letter and your resume. One thing I want to say is that you will be, it's not a remote position. You have to be able to come into the office here in Los Angeles, but that doesn't mean you have to live here now. If you get the job, you just have to be willing to relocate.
Yeah, working at the Command Zone has been one of my great joys in life. Everyone here is fantastic, and it's really just an incredible opportunity. Again, entry-level position. Don't feel intimidated. If you think this is something you can qualify for, go ahead, check out that link, submit your stuff, and let us know why you should be working here.
Yeah, you don't have to have any experience at all. So just go ahead and apply if you think that it sounds fun to work here and that you love the Command Zone.
All right, have fun, everyone. Can't wait to see those cover letters.
Greetings, humans. You have entered the Command Zone, your destination for all aspects of Elder Dragon Highlander. Enjoy your stay.
What's up, everybody? You are watching / listening to the Command Zone podcast. I'm one of your hosts today, Jimmy Wong.
How's it? It's Josh Lee Kwai.
We're back.
We are back. It is time for part 2 of the Multicolored Commanders set review for Dominaria United. On this episode, we are going through
letters N.
Yeah, N through Z,
Nice.
The second half, but only the commanders from the main set and the Commander product. We're saving the box toppers for another episode or two, and then also the uncommon and monocolored commanders we're going to do in their own episode. There's just so many legendary creatures in this set, so many really cool ones that we don't want to skip over any of them, so we're just going to parcel it out over a few videos.
Yep, so this is this is N through Z. The last episode we did was A through M, and then the rest are coming up. You'll see it on the channel. Make sure you subscribe, all that good stuff. But before we get into it, we got to talk about our sponsors, channelfireball.com/command. That's the place to go if you're going to buy Magic product, especially when it comes to Dominaria United. Sealed product, great prices. You're shopping from local game stores around the country, and the marketplace. It's a competitive marketplace, so people are vying for your business. They're trying to get you the best price they can on singles, sealed product, and more. Check it out. All you have to do is go to channelfireball.com/command or enter promo code command at checkout, and you're buying Magic cards anyway. You can also support our show while you do so.
Yeah, all this Dominaria United stuff is available for order right now. Channel Fireball Marketplace is a great buying experience. And of course, once you get those cards, you want to protect them. ULTRAPRO is the game accessories company that Jimmy and I trust our own collections to. We have all of our decks in Eclipse sleeves, in ULTRAPRO Satin Towers Myth Collection, some kind of ULTRAPRO deck box. We always play on ULTRAPRO playmats. We use ULTRAPRO dice. We have ULTRAPRO wall scrolls. ULTRAPRO makes everything you need to adorn your battlefield and protect your game pieces. If you go to ultrapro.com/command, that is our affiliate link. And also, it's kind of a new thing. ULTRAPRO used to only sell through LGSs and other retailers, but now they have their own direct to consumer e-commerce site, I guess you could call it. And one of the great things about that, and of course we encourage people to go to your LGS and support them when you can, but they don't always carry everything ULTRAPRO's got. And ULTRAPRO also often has great deals on their sites, a lot of big discounts, so you can often, find some sales and things like that. So again, ultrapro.com/command is the place to go to get all that stuff.
And the last way and direct way to support the show is directly at patreon.com/commandzone. We love our patrons. They support the show. We now have exclusive content for them, including episodes called Turn Talk, where after extra turns, we get to sit down with the players and just discuss what happened in the game. You can actually check out one of those episodes for free right now on our YouTube channel. But if you want to find that exclusive content and more, like playing games of Spell Table with myself, Josh, and people in the office, head on over patreon.com/commandzone. And we shout out one lucky patron every single episode. And so this episode is dedicated to Grant Mason.
Grant, you rock.
2 first names.
Yeah, Mason.
that.
That's a good name. I heard.
Yeah, it's a great name. All right. Let's get into it. DMU, Dominaria United, Multicolored Commanders, Part Dos.
Remember, it's just the rares and mythics from the main set and the Commander product.
And not the monocolored ones. Those are coming later.
Okay. There's so many. We had to split them up. All right, this is N through Z. Let's not waste any time here. We're going to start with Nemata, primeval, warden. Now, Jimmy and I sort of split these in two because it is difficult to research all of them for both of us.
It's going to be a competition to see who can impress the other the most with their card selections.
So Nemata was one that you did, Jimmy. So go ahead.
All right, Nemata, primeval, warden is 2, a black and a green for a 3/4 legendary creature, tree folk with reach because it's a tree. If a creature an opponent controls would die, exile it instead. When you do, create a 1/1 green sapperling creature token. And then it has 2 activated abilities. The first one is green, sacrifice a sapperling. Nemata, primeval warden, gets +2/+2 until end of turn. And then for 1 in the black, sacrifice 2 sapperlings, draw a card. Okay, so before we get into it, if you are facing off against aristocrat decks or any deck that cares about creatures dying and going to the graveyard, this is the kind of effect you want to basically hose them.
Yeah, because it's going to make it so it's hard to recur their stuff because it gets exiled. And also, when they sack their own things, you'll get the, you get sapperlings.
Yeah, lots of sapperlings. So obviously, if you're playing a token deck, you've got your typical doubling season parallelize. Primal Vigor is currently, I think, the most affordable version of all these, but it does affect everyone. And then I think, the more I looked at this, Sapperling Tribal isn't that strong. Sorry to all the Sapperling fans out there. So I think you actually want to kind of just put in other cards. If you did have Kalidas, then Maskwood Nexus is really good in this deck because it says creatures you control are every creature type. So everything you have is now Sapperling. You can pay a green to sack it to buff Nemata or to draw some cards. Obviously, if you're going to play Nemata, this is a creature version of Leyline of the Void, except it's only creatures. So Leyline and both Douthie exile everything if it goes to the graveyard.
From your opponents only.
Yeah, your opponents only. I honestly think Nemata goes better in the Gave, Guru of Spores deck. And this is just my general inclination when it comes to Sapperling Tribal. It's just it's hard to do that much with it. You've already got the cards you know you're going to have, which are the Doubling Seasons and the Parallel Lives. But winning with it is a bit of a yawn fest because what are you doing? Board wipe, one-sided board wipes maybe, do a lot of creature removal, make a lot of Sapperlings, and then play a Crater Hoof Behemoth?
Yeah, I mean, it's just a normal token strategy. This one might have a aristocrat's bent to it, right? Because Nemata does sacrifice sapperlings,
For 1 green mana, which is pretty cheap, but not as cheap as a Phyrexian or a National Altar.
Right.
There's also Slimefoot the Stowaway, which is, I think, for me, the commander to go to when it comes to sapperlings. Because whenever a sapperling you control dies, Slimefoot deals 1 damage to each opponent and you gain a life. So that becomes a win con in and of itself.
Yeah, you just make enough saps and then sack them and you kind of... It's almost like Zulaport Cutthroat or something at that point, right?
Yeah. So
which you could also have Zulaport and Blood Artist and things.
So, I mean, that could be a way to go with it. You could just be playing Nemata inside another shell because you wanted to have a Leyline of the Void type strategy. It goes really well in a Gave type deck because you're making sapperlings when you do so. But otherwise, the rates on everything, 1 in the black to kill 2 sapperlings and draw a card, not so great when you're in black and you could just play any number of other effects that give you for it cheaper.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I'd rather play Night's Whisper than ever have to sacrifice.
Sure, even Village Rites or something that's sack 1 and draw 2.
Yeah.
It costs you a card, I guess, so you only have 1 card, but yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, Skullgari Aristocrats tokens is not a groundbreaking revolutionary strategy that's never existed, right? This is a thing. Slimefoot already existed, so I think EDHREC Slimefoot would give you a lot of the pieces for a deck like this.
Yep. So not a super impressive start, but Nemata I feel like is one of those cards that is a good utility player because of the exile effect, and you might want to just find it a slot in some other deck that you're playing that just to get a little extra value from tokens or whatever it may be.
I mean, the graveyard hosing does make me think it might be good in another shell, like you said, Gave or something like that, because it gives you some of the utility you want, makes some tokens, can sack them at rates that maybe we don't love. But because it also simultaneously kind of turns off certain decks with the graveyard hosing, it might deserve a spot just because of the versatility of that.
Yeah, and I could see you not wanting to play Leyline of the Void in a Gave deck over Nemata. Because Nemata as a creature gives you more, all the things that you want to do in the Gave deck.
Leyline of the Void better than probably most people think, though. Card turns off so many decks.
These days, you're just playing Douthie Void Walk, right?
Yeah, that's true. All right, next up, this one's mine. It is Ratadrabik of Urborg. This is an interesting one. It is 2 a white and a black for a 3/3 zombie wizard. It has Vigilance and Ward 2. It says other zombies you control have Vigilance. And then the interesting part, whenever another legendary creature you control dies, create a token that's a copy of that creature, except it's not legendary, and it's a 2/2 black zombie in addition to its other colors and types.
Wow.
So this is Orzhov legendary creatures matter / copy recursion, I guess.
Yeah, someone actually messaged us on Discord and said, do you think this would be good in the Dihada deck? I'm like, oh yeah. Because
probably.
A lot of legendary creatures are dying and you want them to come back, but, as a zombie this time.
Yeah, so I think the first step of this process is like you're going to have sack outlets so that you can sacrifice your creatures to get the legendary copies. And I think...
Not legendary copies.
Sorry, the non-legendary copies. Yeah, which is interesting. We'll talk about later. And I think you want those sack outlets as much as possible to be on legendary creatures that could themselves be recurred, right? So that way, if you kill it, or they kill it, or there's a board wipe, you get your sack outlets back with everything else, and you're still kind of going. And there's a whole bunch of legendary creatures in black and white that will allow you to sack things. So there's stuff like Ayara, which you can tap to sacrifice a black creature to draw a card. There's stuff like Ailey, which you can sacrifice creatures to gain life, and then eventually, if you have enough life, you can sack creatures to exile things, kind of anguish on making things. There's those are cool, but they cost mana or they cost tapping.
Yeah.
So,
a little clunky.
Yeah, and so I think preferably we like our sack outlets to cost nothing. That way we don't have to leave a bunch of mana open, and when things happen, like if they go to exile everything, I want to be able to sack everything in response so that it does not get exiled, it just dies. And then so Yahenni's a really, really good one because it's a free sack outlet, gives Yahenni indestructible when you do that. Yahenni kind of gets bigger over the course of the game.
Yeah.
And a 2/2 zombie version of Yahenni that's non-legendary is not any different, really, than regular Yahenni, right?
Yeah. Now, Yahenni only grows when other creatures die that opponents control, but it's just sack a creature, it gets indestructible. I've seen Yahenni get to like a 12/12, and every time someone's like, board wipe, it's like, Yahenni's
make it indestructible?
Yeah. Sorry. And it has haste, so it just keeps smacking in.
And it's just good for, in those emergency situations, they go to steal your creature or whatever, sack it in response. Yawgmoth is a really good free sack outlet. You pay a life, sack a creature, put a -1/-1 counter on one creature, and draw a card.
Yeah, that's just nuts.
Yep. Another one is God Eternal Bantu. Now, this is not an activated ability. It's an ETB ability. This is a 5/6 with Menace, but when it enters the battlefield, sacrifice any number of other permanents, then draw that many cards.
Could be lands, could be treasures, could be legendary creatures.
And the great thing about God Eternal Bantu is if you have another sack outlet, like let's say Yahenni out, you can sack it at any time, then Ratadrabik will make the copy, which comes in, and you can sacrifice more creatures. So it kind of does give you an instant speed sack outlets, provided you have another sack outlet, which is interesting.
Yeah, I like that a lot.
Yeah. So then, of course, there are the sack outlets. Like, we would love to have Merciless Executioner, Fleshbag Marauder in this deck, but those are not legendary creatures. And I'm not saying you wouldn't ever play a card like that, but looking for legendary creatures that do what Merciless Executioner does is a little bit more difficult, because there aren't any that straight up say, everybody sacks a creature when this ETBs.
Right.
But there are ones that kind of say that. There's like Henrika Domnathi, which at the beginning of combat on your turn, choose one that hasn't been chosen. Each player sacrifices a creature as the first one.
Okay.
So that's kind of an ETB almost.
Yeah, you go play it,
go to combat.
Right.
Yeah, it also can draw you a card and you lose a life, and you can also transform Henrika. We won't get into the backside because it doesn't matter as much. Rankle is very similar to that. So these are two cards that kind of will work a lot like Merciless Executioner.
Right.
The great thing is they can still sack themselves, come back as 2/2s.
Yeah, I was going to say Henrika's great because you can just sack it comes back, and you get the effect again.
Yeah,
so each player sacks a creature.
You get it the next turn.
The next turn, right? Yeah,
you don't get two beginnings of combat. But yeah, exactly. So you
just never have to transform Henrika necessarily if you don't want to.
And those will just functionally work as Merciless Executioners, basically, right?
Yeah. There's
something like Anawan the Rune Sage, which is a little slower, but it's repeatable. It's 5 mana for a 4/3. At the beginning of your upkeep, each player sacrifices a non-vampire creature.
Oh, it's like a Shieldred type effect.
Yeah, exactly. And again, Anawan could sack itself, come back as a 2/2, and keep that ability on the battlefield, which is really devastating to a lot of decks and a lot of your opponents, right? Like, now they've had to sack multiple creatures on the upkeep. Like, that Shieldred effect is just very hard to get around.
Yep.
I think the sack outlets are going to be very strong because of the legendary creatures that exist in black and white. And then you start looking at legends that you want to recur and copy. And this is weird, but you basically are looking for enter the battlefield effects or dies effects, because those are effects you can get twice.
Yeah, you're going to sack it, it's going to die, and it's going to come back on the battlefield. So both.
And presumably die again.
Yeah.
So if you get an ETB, you're going to play it, it's going to die, it's going to come back in ETB again. So you're going to get twice as many ETBs and dies triggers, or leaves triggers, which there aren't really any.
Ooh.
Yeah. But the funny thing is, as you go through and you start looking at the legends for these colors, there's not a ton of ETB or dice triggers on legendary creatures. There are, but it's not as deep as you'd think.
Especially because you have to find a legendary creature.
Right.
There's a lot of just regular creatures, yeah.
Yeah, because my brain was like, Gray Merchant, this is crazy. And you're like, oh yeah, Gray Merchant, it's not legendary. That doesn't work.
Can't do it.
Yeah. So the ETB creatures that are really good are stuff like Gonti. This is one of your favorites, Jimmy.
Oh, yeah.
Basically steals the best of the top 4 of your opponent's library. You can play it. Anafenza, Kintry Spirit, is whenever another non-token creature enters the battlefield, you bolster one. So every time you're playing one of these creatures, you'll get to grow your thing a little bit. Okay. Not the hugest of effects, but it kind of does help. The dice triggers there's more of them. There's more good ones. And these are obviously a little bit worse because they don't work as good if you don't have a sacrifice outlet out.
Yeah.
Because, some things just don't die or they get exiled, they get bounced. Yeah, but Kokusho's a really good one, right?
Yeah. Each opponent loses 5 life when Kokusho dies, and you gain 15 life, basically.
Life equal to the life lost this way. So there's only 2 players, you only gain 10, but yeah.
Repeat this a couple of times, it's pretty devastating.
Yeah, if you sack it and then sack the 2/2 that Ratadrabik makes, that's 10 damage to everybody and you gain 30 life.
Jeez.
Yeah, so that can be pretty nuts.
That's a big swing.
There's Ao the Dawn Sky, which is the new dragon spirit from the new Kamigawa, because Kokushu's from the original Kamigawa. Mm-hmm. And this is when Ao dies, which is a 5-mana, 5/4 flyer with vigilance. You look at the top 7 cards of your library and put any number of non-land permanent cards with total mana value 4 or less from among them onto the battlefield.
Okay.
Yeah, or you put 2/1/1 counters on each permanent you control that's a creature or vehicle. Both are good, and if you do both twice, you're either going to get a number of things out onto the battlefield, which you then may be able to sack and sort of keep doing things, or you just, if your board's big enough, make it bigger.
Or do both. It dies, you find the cards on the battlefield, it comes back, it dies again, then you put the counters on.
Yep, exactly.
Very cool.
Alenda the Dusk Rose is another one. When she dies, you make a number of 1/1 vampires equal to her power.
Yeah, and when another creature dies, you get to put a +1/+1 counter on Alenda. So
yeah,
cool.
So if you can sack things twice, then all of a sudden, you sack this, sack its copy that came out, sack another thing, sack its copy. Yeah. That's 4 counters on Alenda. Sack Alenda, her copy comes back out. Maybe you can sack a few other things. Mm-hmm. Anyway, there's less legendary creatures that have enters and dies than you think. So this is actually not as strong as I thought it was going to be. However, there is some combo potential with this card, and anytime you're sort of making non-legendary copies of legendaries or recurring things multiple times, there's always going to be. Sidisi Undead Vizier is sort of the best, it is straight up the best card in the deck. It's kind of nuts.
As the moment I read Sidisi again, I was like, oh, this is the best card in the deck.
Yeah, it's nuts. It's 5 mana for a 4/6 with Death Touch, but it has Exploit, which means when it enters the battlefield, you can sacrifice another creature. And then if you do Exploit when Sidisi comes out, you get to Demonic Tutor. Mm-hmm. And the thing is, you can exploit yourself. So Sidisi can come out, exploit itself, dies, comes back as a 2/2, you Demonic Tutor. When it comes back as a 2/2, you can exploit itself again,
double
dies.
Tutor.
So 5 mana tutor twice, and it's sitting in your graveyard. And the interesting thing about Ratadrabik is it doesn't exile the thing, which it sort of feels like it should.
Oh, okay.
So let's imagine that Sidisi goes and gets Reanimate and Animate Dead, and then you reanimate it,
tutor twice,
tutor 2 more times, right?
Yeah.
Then Animate Dead it, tutor 2 more times. So for, 5, 6, 7, 8 mana, you've tutored effectively 4 times because 2 of them had to get you the recursion to keep doing it. But you can win the game almost no problem tutoring 4 times.
Yeah.
So
that's pretty crazy.
Yeah.
Also, Sidisi can just exploit another legendary creature that you want the dice triggers from, too.
Exactly.
So.
It doesn't have to exploit itself. Although you sort of want it in the graveyard so you can reanimate it, right? Yeah, so you can do I don't know, one of the new ones is Abdul Adrian and Animate Dead. So Abdul Adrian, Posty loves this one. He pulled this on me the other night, which is Abdul Adrian, you sack it, then you Animate Dead it. When it enters the battlefield, it exiles Animate Dead.
Sacking it
which
again.
Makes it die.
Yeah.
Which makes Animate Dead come back, which brings Abdul back, which you repeat that process and you get infinite amount of 1/1s. Now, they don't have haste, but, that's a 2-card combo in these colors that could work. There's, of course, Heliod Suncrown, Walking Ballista. Mm-hmm. You can do stuff with Nim Deathmantle, Ashnod's Altar. One of the things with Nim Deathmantle and Ashnod's Altar is that you need an effect that is ETB that's strong enough to win you the game. So Kokusho or something would do it. Yep. But if you don't have that, there's venture into the dungeon stuff that would work.
Oh, because you just keep going through the same dungeon and make everyone lose a life?
Yeah. So you can do the lose a life or get as many treasures as you want or draw your whole deck. So Borrowin or Nadar, they ETB and venture into the dungeon. So if you can infinitely recur them, that could be sort of a win con. Of course, you can always get buried alive with one of the tutors off of Sidisi and put Phyrexian Devourer and Triskelion in your graveyard, and then with one of the other tutors, because you're tutoring so much with Sidisi,
Right.
you could get Necrotic Ooze, and that's an infinite combo. It's basically... Listen, we could list off all the infinite combos you could get, but if you wanted to with Sidisi, you can basically combo off the moment you play it with Ratadrabik, so that is very powerful. You can also just be sort of more fair, get Cabal Coffers and Urborg, just have a ton of mana, do what we say, which is don't go infinite, just go a lot. Just cast a lot of things.
A lot finite.
Yeah, so there's obviously Sidisi all on its own is a lot of interesting interactions. And then finally, I wanted to talk about another sort of cool interaction in Teysa Karlov, that doubles dies triggers, which counts Ratadrabik. So now when a legendary creature dies, you make 2 copies of it.
Wow.
Now,
And they're not legendary, so
Right.
they get to sit by each other, yeah.
Now, if the first thing that you do that with is Teysa, then all of a sudden you're going to make 4 copies of everything.
Jeez.
Because you'll have 2 Teysas out.
Oh, that's right. Teysa dies and comes back, and then you get 2 Teysas, yeah.
Yeah, so if a creature dies now, you double their trigger basically twice. Then there's Anointed Procession, which would make double the copies. Stuff like Luminous Broodmoth that would allow all the stuff to come back. Because again, it does not exile when it dies and makes the 2/2.
Right.
So if you had Sidisi and Luminous Broodmoth, or if you had Luminous Broodmoth out, you cast Sidisi, it exploits itself and dies.
Gets you a copy.
Gets a
with
2/2.
Ratadrabik.
And then Luminous Broodmoth brings the original Sidisi back.
That's a legendary and a non-legendary version of DC, so you have, wow, that's a
Which
lot.
can then exploit itself and die again
Yep.
and make another 2/2. Now, Luminous Broodmoth won't bring it back the second time because of the flying counter, but that is a way to sort of further push this stuff. Machias the Unhallowed will do a similar thing because of the Undying. And then there's cards like Cauldron of Souls, which will allow you to sort of give persist, which is similar, allow you to sack a creature an additional time. Gift of Immortality seems amazing because you just sack it every turn now.
Just keeps coming back over and over again.
Yeah, because Gift brings it back. So like, okay, on Jimmy's turn, I sack it and make the
This is
2/2
just
copy.
a DC deck with an extra enchantment.
It's true, and it's in white and black, so finding Sidisi, like black is the best tutor color, is not going to be difficult if that's what you want to do. I don't tend to like to play a lot of tutors.
Yeah.
So you could probably build this version of this deck that doesn't allow itself to tutor, and that'll keep its power clamped down quite a bit. But still, with Annoying Procession, Teysa, and things like that, it's still going to be powerful. So
Yeah, Teysa, Ratadrabik, plus just any of the legends we talked about seems pretty fun.
Yeah. So anyway, that is a cool one with a lot of possibilities. I was just a little disappointed there weren't more cool ETB and dies effects. I mean, there are some, but not on legendary creatures, not as many as you think.
Yeah, but it could be more in the future, which makes cards like Ratadrabik really exciting. His name is, by the way, Ratadrabik of Urborg, so you better be getting Urborg.
And Cabal Coffers, yeah.
Yeah.
If you do that with Sidisi, I'm happy because you're not infinite comboing, right?
That's being very flavorful and
that's
powerful.
the most fair way to go, yeah.
Yeah. All right, nice. That was a good breakdown. Next up, we have a really fun one, more fun than my first card. It's Rith, Liberated Primeval, which, by the way, Brian Kibler previewed, which I thought was very cute because he's
the Dragon Lord or the Dragon Master or the Dragon something.
The dragon with a lot of hair these days. So Rith is 2 in Naya, so 2 red, green, and white for a 5/5 legendary creature dragon with flying and ward 2. And it says other dragons you control have ward 2. So ward 2 is basically every time you try and target it, you have to pay an extra 2 mana.
Your opponents,
yeah.
Yep.
At the beginning of your end step, if a creature or planeswalker an opponent controlled was dealt excess damage this turn, create a 4/4 red dragon creature token with flying.
This is cool. Excess damage matters. This is kind of a new thing.
Yeah.
They previewed in like an unset at some point, but
yeah, right. So excess damage is if I have a 1/1 and you lightning bolt it, it deals 3 damage. That is excess damage to killing it.
It had more damage than it needed.
It was excess.
Also, if I attack with a 4/4 and you block with a 2/2, that'd count, right?
Yep. So it has to be a creature or planeswalker an opponent controlled was dealt excess damage this turn by any source. So it could be combat, spells, all that good stuff. What's interesting is that there seems to be a new theme coming on, which is that dragons now apparently you get tokens and you get ward. Because Miram is another very popular deck that instantly shot up to the top of the dragon decks that also has flying and ward too and makes tokens. Dragon tokens specifically. So it seems like that's kind of a theme going on. Let's see if they explore other color combinations with it. We'll see.
Make dragons a little harder to kill.
Yeah.
That's good because hexproof seems way too good, but ward 1 or 2 feels like I can kill it, but it's annoying.
But all your dragons getting ward is pretty good. Yeah, it makes any efficient removal, like Path to Exile is now 3 mana. Doesn't feel
way
so
worse.
good. Yeah. So obviously excess damage is more than lethal. Even the lightning bolt and the low toughness creature is going to get that 4/4. There's a lot of creatures out there in red that give buffs to your other spells. Torbrand does it.
Or to damage.
Or to damage, yeah. Torbrand adds 2 damage to any red source dealing damage. Firesong and Sunspeaker is great because every time you have a whiter instant sorcery spell that gains you life. It deals 3 damage, so you can go that route as well. And then you've got like Boros Reckoner, Brash Taunter, which allows you to redirect damage as you please. So it's like, oh darn, this lightning bolt can only hit, this spell can only hit a creature. I want to hit that planeswalker or that player. Boros Reckoner, you hit that with the removal spell or whatever. It deals that damage to someone else or some other creature, whatever.
Different target.
Yeah, different target.
Also, just makes you impossible to attack because
they just block and then zap
that thing
something.
dies, or you kill something else and get a 4/4. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, notably, it's excess damage and only happens once, so you don't have to have every single spell do it. So I think you should want some flexibility to be like, I just need to hit this thing and hit you. I don't care if it's excess or not. I've already dealt enough damage. Moving onwards, Chandra's Incinerator is a card that I'm always trying to fit into decks.
And this is another card that cares about excess damage, kind of.
Yeah, so it's 5 and a red for a 6/6. It costs a lot, but it costs X less to cast, where X is the total amount of non-combat damage dealt to your opponents this turn. That's at their face. It has trample, and it says whenever source you control deals non-combat damage to an opponent, Chandra's Incinerator deals that much damage to target creature or planeswalker that player controls. So now you can go combos where you're hitting your Boros Reckoner with a target creature only spell. That then goes to your opponent. That then from Chandra's Incinerator hits a creature, and then you get the excess damage clause.
Yeah, or even just lightning bolts and shocks kind of become good at that point.
Yeah. Now, I think you also want to have a lot of cheap spells that do a lot of damage. So Boros Charm does a lot. There's this new spell called Delayed Blast Fireball, which I think is interesting. It has Foretell for 4 red. It's a 1 red typically for an instant. It deals 2 damage to each opponent and each creature they control. So if they have any 1/1s, this counts as excess damage. And if the spell is cast from exile, it deals 5 damage to each opponent and each creature they control instead. So you can just sort of foretell this for 2 early on, instant speed it for 6 later, and just deal a ton of damage.
Oh boy, this makes Blasphemous Act quite good as well.
Blasphemous Act is very
13
good.
to everything.
Yeah.
Nothing has 13 toughness, so...
But the thing is, you're only making 1 4/4, so I think you can't... Yeah, if it was for each thing that got dealt excess damage, it'd be great. So I think you're just trying to occasionally make 4/4s when it's convenient, but really just be a sort of damage-based dragon deck and just...
it really does make lightning bolts and stuff better, because a lot of 2/2s running around, you just bolt it, get a 4/4, kill it. That's like a 1 mana... kill a thing, make a 4/4 flyer. It's pretty, with Ward 2, it's pretty good. Yeah.
Yeah, so you got like Galvanic Blast as well. If you have a lot of artifacts, it deals 4 damage to any target. And then finally, I might be able to find a place for Electro Dominance.
Oh, I love this card. I played in a lot of decks.
So this is X red. It deals X damage to any target, and then you can cast a card with for a mana cost X or less from your hand without paying its mana cost. Typically, you're like, all right, well, I'll just kill this for 2. But now you can dump a bunch of mana into it, get a big card, and a 4/4 as a result.
It's a great way to sneak a Seedborn Muse out on an end step. Kill something, get your Seedborn out.
Pretty good.
Untap and protect it right away.
Now, I think another easy way to do excess damage is just have big creatures attacking that people want to chump block. So dragons. And dragons that can be blocked more often than not are ones on the ground. So it seems like a fun deck to put ground dragons in. So you have Rondis, Rage of Ancients. So whenever it is dealt damage, you can create a 5/4 red and green dragon spirit creature token with when this creature dies, deals damage, sacrifice it. So we saw this get played by Joe Manganiello on game nights. And then you also have Thrakkus the Butcher. These are both D&D cards, I'm pretty sure. Yep. Whenever Thrakkus attacks, double the power of each dragon you control until end of turn.
Joe would be able to tell us their entire history, but I don't know off the top of my head.
Dragonborn Champion, whenever a source you control deals 5 or more damage to a player, draw a card. So then they have a really interesting situation where it's like, do I get hit for 5 or do I just chump block and give you a 4/4 instead?
Yeah, do you get a card or do you get a 4/4 flyer? They're both bad.
Yeah, both bad news. And then if you're going in the air, you have all the dragons, but you got like Scourge of Valkus, which I really like, because this and like Dragon Tempest, whenever another dragon or Scourge enters the battlefield, it deals X damage to any target, where X is the number of dragons you control.
So once you've made like 3 or 4 dragons, it's a lot.
Every single thing you kill is probably going to have excess damage dealt to it.
Oh yeah, because that goes boom. Now play a lightning bolt, make a dragon, which kills something with excess damage and makes a dragon. Oh my god.
Well, I don't know if you. So we have to be careful because I wish Rith was a little more powerful. It's just at the beginning of your end step, so it only happens one time.
Oh, 1 per turn.
Yeah,
I was
not
thinking 1 per
turn.
instance. Oh, I got you.
If it was 1 per instance, then you would build the entire deck around this
All
effect.
Right, I'll stop saying
so
that.
now you're kind of in this weird balance because, a good question. It goes right to the next question, which is like, in these types of decks, you're making a lot of tokens, presumably, but is it enough tokens to want to play Annoying Procession and Parallel Lives? Because if you're only making 1 a turn, do you actually want to build the deck entirely around that effect? Because it's only on your turn and only when you do this specific thing.
It feels like it's better to have more lightning bolts than more Annoying Processions, right?
Yeah.
Because you're going to kill more creatures and make the same amount of dragons, and you'll be able to hide it better too. Like,
having the Annoying Procession out. Let's say you put 4 mana into it, you lightning bolt something, end turn you get 2 4/4s. It's like, haha, got him, board wipe. wow, that wasn't as explosive as I thought. Whereas with Mirim, it's every time you cast a dragon, you're getting another one. So then you want to have a Parallel Lives in that deck. So like we said earlier, once you've dealt excess damage once, you don't need to keep sort of being like, well, I need to keep doing it. Yeah, on that turn. So I think there's actually a lot of spells you still do play in this deck. Like Ram Through is an instant. Target creature you control deals damage equal to its power to target creature you don't control. If the creature you control has trample, excess damage is dealt to that creature's controller instead. So that's the type of effect where it's like, the trample actually takes the excess damage away and it deals it to the players.
So you wouldn't get a dragon there.
But you don't necessarily need it either if you've already done it once that turn.
Sure.
So that's when you have your Blasphemous Act plus Toralf, God of Fury, which is whenever a creature, planeswalker, and opponent controls is dealt excess non-combat damage, Toralf deals damage equal to the excess to any target other than that permanent. So this can turn excess damage now into, cool, I'll kill that, and Toralf is just going to swing the excess at something else and give that excess, or you hit Blasphemous Act and just kill everyone instantly. And actually, the back of Toralf is fine, too. It's a hammer that's 1 in a red, and then you equip the creature for 1 in a red, and it says 1 in a red, tap, unattach it. It deals 3 damage to any target and returns it to its hand. So that's another way to get if you have no other effects in hand, to deal excess damage.
Yeah, it's a lightning bolt.
It's a little inefficient,
but
it is there, yeah.
Well, I mean, and that plays, I think the lightning bolts are so good because it plays into the fact that the format's gotten faster, people playing more low drop creatures.
Yeah.
So there's just Ragavans and Tymnas and all kinds of stuff, running around that's small. So a lightning bolt's almost always going to deal excess damage.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if it's a deal 3 damage, kill a creature, and make a 4/4 on
for
your turn,
1 mana or 2 mana, that's ridiculous. Yeah. Even Lightning Strike is good in that instance.
I discovered that Ryu World Warrior, Street Fighter, is actually a card that cares about excess damage as well.
Hadouken!
When he has his Hadouken, so it's 4 red and untap it. Discard a card, Ryu deals damage equal to the power, to his power to any target, and if excess damage was dealt to a creature this way, you draw a card.
So now you could
deal excess damage, draw a card.
Yep. If you can just pump Ryu a little bit too.
Put Toralf's Hammer on it, gets +3/+0.
Now all of a sudden it's discard a card, make a 4/4, kill a creature, and draw a card.
Yeah, for 5 mana and untapping it, it's a little...
It's a lot, but still.
It's a lot, but it's fun, right? I think at this point, you're not necessarily going for pure power.
Oh, that's Toralf's Hammer. I guess you could unattach it and tap him so that you can untap him, but that doesn't work as good,
I think the more powerful part of Rith is every dragon you have control has Ward 2. So if you're building a dragon tribal deck or you're just putting it in Ur-Dragon, it's pretty good.
Or Scion even.
Yeah, Scion. I mean, it's going to cost less than Ur-Dragon, and all of a sudden you just have this thing that protects every single dragon that you have on the battlefield. Seems pretty good. Over and out.
All right, well, speaking of dragons, the next one is Rivaz of the Claw, which is another dragon tribal deck, although Rivaz herself is not a dragon.
Oh yeah, that's right. It's like a dragon friend.
Yeah. So it's 1, a black and a red, 3 mana for a 3/3 legendary Viashino Warlock. Rivaz has Menace. You can tap Rivaz and add 2 mana in any combination of colors, but you can spend this mana only to cast dragon creature spells. Once during each of your turns, you may cast a dragon creature spell from your graveyard.
Okay.
And whenever you cast a dragon creature spell from your graveyard, it gains, when this creature dies, exile it. So that's a downside. So it gives you access to the dragons in your graveyard and then taps 4 mana to only cast dragons. This is another dragon tribal deck in black and red in Rakdos. We talked about the new Bladewing in the last episode. The old Bladewing, both Bladewings care about your graveyard being full. The old Bladewing cares about dragons. The new Bladewing just cares about creatures in there. I think both are going to have a bunch of cards that are going to cross over with a Rivaz deck. Yeah. Rivaz will obviously be pretty good in both of those other 2 decks. Maybe not the new Bladewing because it doesn't have to be dragon tribal, so maybe there's no dragons in there.
Right.
But the old Bladewing, which resurrects a dragon from your graveyard to the battlefield, that's going to have a lot of crossover with the Rivaz deck, and it'll be up to you to decide whether just old Bladewing is just kind of better than Rivaz or not. One thing I'll say is Rivaz will help you cast your dragons faster.
Yeah, old Bladewing costs, 7 mana?
Yeah, which is a ton, but there are a bunch of combos with the old Bladewing, so it is very powerful. So, yeah, the first thing you think of is Rakdos Dragons. You're going to want, dragon synergies and dragon cards. So the Lathleses, the Utvara Hellkites. You just talked about Scourge of Valkis, Jimmy.
Great card.
Yep. A lot of the red and black dragons you'll want in there. Then you're going to want all the dragon synergy stuff that most dragon decks have. Dragon Tempest, Dragon Lord Servant, Crux of Fate. These are just very commonly used dragon cards, right? Make your dragons cost less. make your dragons, give them haste, have them do stuff when they enter the battlefield.
Kill all non-dragons.
Yeah.
Including your commander.
Yeah, that's true. Your commander is a non-dragon, so Crux of Fate. But I think by the time you're casting Crux of Fate, you've got 3 or 4 dragons, and you're like, I don't care if my commander dies, I'm good now.
Yeah. This should help me win the game.
Yep. And Rivaz also, the turn you cast it doesn't have haste, but can give you access to casting the creature, the dragon creature out of your graveyard. So
I see.
It sort of has haste on some of its abilities if you think of it like that. Of course, you're going to need things in your graveyard, and Rivaz is going to be at the most powerful when your graveyard's quite full, because now it's kind of tutoring, right? Like, it's just looking through your graveyard. I mean, which dragon do I want to cast? If there's only 1 or 2 cards in there, the choices aren't like tutoring, but once there's 20 cards or so, you're picking the right thing for the right moment. Either of the past Blade Wings, are a good roadmap for the type of self-mill stuff of filling your graveyard you're going to want. Stitcher Supplier, we always talk about for this stuff. Milliken, Altar of Dementia is pretty good because dragons tend to be big. If you sack them, you can mill yourself for a lot. Stinkweed Imp, just because of the dredge mechanic.
So, yeah, dredge 5.
Yeah, dredge is great. Red helps you with the faithless lootings and the thrill of possibilities of the world, because you can pick which thing to specifically put in your graveyard, and you didn't lose it. Rivaz lets you cast it, so it's as if it was in your hand anyway.
Speaking of Milliken, it's a 2-mana creature that taps and gives you a colorless mana and mills a card when it does so. Do you think that's a way to make 2-mana rocks, is just put them on creature bodies because they don't have haste?
Maybe, but there's a lot, right? Because the old mirror all do it. Like, those are
Iron Mirror and all those ones,
I think they need additional utility like Milliken has, where it's like, okay, it mills me a card and creates the mana. Yeah. That makes it worth it. But if it only tapped for mana, I think it's probably not good enough to push out like a Signet or something like that.
Yeah.
And of course, red has a bunch of wheel effects. Those also fill your graveyard. I wanted to mention, you probably want Anger in this deck, since you are going to be milling. You're going to be able to Faithless Looting and stuff, and that's a way to give all your dragons haste, which is very important for dragons because they're expensive and you want them to swing right away, and a lot of them have like on attack triggers.
Yeah, and tap your commander when it comes out.
Yeah, and I think other than that, it's not going to be that different than like a bunch of Rakdos Dragons decks. You're going to run a lot of the same things. The only thing I'll say is that there is that exile clause on Rivaz.
When the creature you bring back dies, it exiles, so you can't do it again.
So anytime you bring it, this is the thing Ratadrabik didn't have, which is surprising, right?
Right.
Yeah, when I've cast my dragon out of my graveyard, well, the next time it dies, it's gone forever. It's exiled. So there are ways to kind of get rid of that exile clause, though, and if this is important to you, and I'm really not sure that it is, there are ways to get around it. There's Conjurer's Closet. If you blink the thing, it comes back in. It no longer has the...
Yeah, it's a new copy of that permanent.
Yeah, so sort of Hearth and Home. You can even do the cards that say, when this creature dies, return it to the battlefield tapped under its owner's control, because Rivaz doesn't give it a replacement effect. It
doesn't say instead. It just gains this text.
It gains the text, when this creature dies, exile it. So that trigger would go on the stack, but if you had another trigger attached to it from like Malakir Rebirth,
then that would see it first, return
Undying Malakir. So you get to stack your triggers, right? So you say, Malakir Rebirth, when this creature dies, returns to the battlefield tapped under its owner's control. So what you can do is cast Malakir Rebirth. Now, when it dies, it'll have 2 triggers. One says exile it, you put that on the bottom, and you say one says bring it back to the battlefield, you put that one on the top.
Yeah.
And now when it goes to exile, it's like, oh, it's not there anymore.
It's not in the graveyard, it can't exile it, yeah.
Yeah. So that's another sort of way around it. I would say, you can also play like Cauldron of Souls.
Oh, right, Persist.
Yeah, that kind of stuff. But I would say, like, if you cast multiple dragons from your graveyard, like, you're probably doing pretty well. And the fact that it's going to get exiled when it dies is probably not as big of a deal.
Yeah.
Just cast different ones out of there with Rivaz the next time.
Rivaz's text would have to say, if the creature you control would die or leave the battlefield, exile instead for any reason.
Exile it instead.
Instead, the big word instead there is not there, so you can get around it.
Yeah, because it's not replacing the effect of the dying. It's triggering when it dies. So you just, you just scoop it with another trigger. So anyway, I think Rivaz is, cool. It's it's that quintessential question of, in your command zone, do you want a setup card or a payoff card? And Rivaz is a setup card, whereas, New Bladewing is more of a payoff card, right? Like, it says, oh, once you've done all this stuff, I'll give you the game-winning play. Rivaz is not a game-winning play. It says, I will set you up to make the game-winning play with the other cards in your deck. And in general, I would say setup cards are better.
Yeah, it telegraphs a lot less what you're about to do. Because if it's like, I've got the combo ready, just need to cast my commander, everyone's going to go, okie dokie.
Yeah, I can see your commander. That's why you don't want Craterhoof in your command zone so much. You'd rather have the token maker in your command zone, and then they don't know if you have Craterhoof in your hand. They don't know when you're going to go for it.
Yep. Okay, very nice. Lots of dragons. Moving on.
Yeah, it's funny. Dominaria isn't a lot. I guess Shiv is there, and the Shiv is like a dragon area. So, yeah. I was just thinking, we just come off Dungeons and Dragons. There's been a lot of dragons, like
Been a
new
good
dragons
year.
lately. Yeah,
Good year for dragons. Year of the Dragon? Didn't we say it was Dragon Week?
it's
Dragon
not the year of the dragon though.
Yeah, it's true.
It's the year of the tiger. We know because of our playmat.
That's right. But they both roar. Okay. Next up, we have Shanid Sleeper's Scourge. This is from the Dihada precon. This is 1, a red, white, and a black for a 2/4 legendary creature, human knight with menace, Menace. Other legendary creatures you control have menace. That was like a minute.
That was Menace and Menace combined.
Yeah. And then
Somebody's saying Menace in reverse.
Yeah,
Yes,
and then whenever you play a legendary land or cast a legendary spell, you draw a card and you lose a life.
that last part's pretty good. Tactile of legendary things.
Yeah, that last part's real spicy. So finally, we have Menace Tribal again. This time in Mardu with legendary matters. But the question I think is like, do you care about that part?
The Menace seems like totally who cares.
Yeah.
Like maybe you put one of those Menace cares about Menace cards in
There's
there.
a couple
legends.
Yeah. But it does give all your legendary creatures that you cast with menace. So there is an argument that you do want a couple of supporting cards, but I don't think you build around the menace.
It's like a sub theme, not a theme.
Yeah.
The theme is legendary stuff matters, right? The sub theme is maybe you care about Menace a little bit.
And not just that, but you play legendary lands, draw a card as well.
That's what I mean, Tatiova, right? Because you're going to want most of your lands to be legendary, I would assume.
Almost all of them if you could. You could play the land and then you can tap and play a legendary, draw 2 cards that turn, which is pretty cool.
I like the sound of that.
It's like Enchantress, basically, but for legendaries.
It's like Enchantress, but the cards you're casting might actually kill your opponent.
Yeah.
They might do
Instead
things.
just dawdle and do nothing until you wait for your Felidar retreat.
Until everybody falls asleep.
Yeah. And your board state looks... I mean, if you saw the last extra turns, you know exactly what happens when Enchantresses just start going off.
Yeah.
They fill the board, and then they have to wait until they can finally get the combo going.
You're like, wow, that's a lot of cards on your board. How do we die? And they're like, you don't. Go.
I hit you with 5 1/1s.
Okay, go.
Okay, go. Yeah. All right, so one land that we've talked about already is Untadaki, the Cloud Keeper. This is
Perfect.
Ancient Tomb, but for legendary spells. Enters the battlefield tapped. You pay 2 life and tap it. Add 2 to your mana pool. Spend this mana only to cast legendary spells. Pretty good. There's a card called Hammerheim, which is just tap it to add red, and then you can tap it to target creature loses all landwalk abilities until end of turn. More importantly, it's a legendary land that enters the battlefield untapped.
Yep.
Then you've got Urborg, you've got all of the channel lands, Igonjo, Sea of the Empire, Takanuma, Sokenzan. You also have the old Igonjo Castle. There's a lot of legendary lands out there. You're really looking for ones that don't give you a downside or don't do anything.
You can play a couple tap lands or whatever, but have some other upside.
I mean, if you
are you thinking you can make it to like 100% of the lands are legendary, or is it more like 80% or so?
Not. Yeah, you're probably going most of them legendary because you still will have your regular.
You still want like a Triome, and you still want a couple fetch lands.
And if you have fetch lands and all that stuff, you want to be able to fetch that because a lot of the legendary lands do not have the subtype plains, mountain, swamp.
Right. Good.
Now, legendary creatures. You've got your pick. This is Mardu. There are so many legendary creatures. You can look at any of the Dihada lists that have been popping up as well and see what cards they're putting in there. So I'm just going to mention a couple that we haven't mentioned yet. Massacre Girl is a board wipe legendary creature. I'm not going to explain it. There's a lot of text. Just go read it yourself.
But it almost always wipes the board. There needs to be a 1/1.
Yeah, there needs to be a 1/1.
But if there is, usually it'll wipe the rest.
Grenzo Havoc Razor, I think, is really good because it says whenever a creature you control deals combat damage to a player, you can either go the creature the player controls or you exile the top card of that player's library, and then you can cast that card and spend mana as though it was mana of any color to cast it. Everything has menace. So your creatures are probably going to be getting through for some damage.
That's great.
Breach's Brazen Plunderer is one of the partner commanders that is just a menace creature. It has a similar line of text to Grenzo, so it attacks, it will give you something. Nice thing, because it has menace, you don't need your commander out to have it sort of do the thing. A lot of people are talking about Sir Gwyn, Hero of Ashvale. This is another legendary creature, human knight. Turns out a lot of those knights are already legendary. So you could put Shanid in the Sir Gwyn deck or the other way around. You're going to get a lot of triggers either way because it cares about legendary stuff.
Interesting.
Legendary spells.
Planeswalkers. It's easy to forget that Planeswalkers are all legendary.
Yeah. So Lolth, the ones that care about menace are Lolth, Spider Queen, and Angrith, Captain of Chaos. Both very powerful, both drawing you a card when they enter the battlefield seems really nice. And then you just have the traditionally very powerful Mardu Planeswalkers, so like Elspeth Sun's Champion, Jeska, Thrice Reborn. Jeska seems really good because you're doing a ton of damage, and again, you have Menace, so just ways to just get in more damage. Some people were thinking maybe this could be in the Goshen Tai of Life's Origin deck because all of the shrines are legendary.
Yeah, that's interesting.
So that, again, it's like acting as a duplicate for an Enchantress effect. But this time it's actually, a creature that can kill your opponents. And then the Menace Matter stuff. So if you want your creatures just to actually be unblockable, you'd play a card like Sonorous Howlbonder, which says each creature you control with Menace can't be blocked except by 3 or more creatures. That's probably going to get through every time. And then you have cards like Vorak Battlehorns and Yuan Shao the Indecisive. So these basically say equipped creature has trample and can't be blocked by more than one creature. So if it has Menace, then those two say you just can't block it.
Yep.
And Yuan Shao does the same, but for each of your creatures, as long as Yuan Shao is in play. Labyrinth Raptor, whenever a creature you control with Menace becomes blocked, defending player sacrifices a creature blocking it.
Pretty much means they're never blocking.
Yeah, they're never blocking it. And then you might play cards like Tentative Connection. I really like this. 3 in a red for a sorcery. It costs 3 less if you control a creature with Menace, and you gain control of target creature until end of turn. Untap that creature, it gains haste till end of turn. So this is a 1 mana active treason.
That's pretty good.
Seems like a pretty good rate. Professional Facebreaker. This card is just...
This card's nuts.
It's nuts.
Yeah. If you're not playing Professional Facebreaker, you should start right now.
Yeah. So whenever...
In all red decks, but very good in this deck.
Very good in this deck. Whenever one or more creatures you control deals combat damage to a player, create a treasure token. And that's not it.
But all your creatures have Menace, and this also comes with Menace naturally.
Yeah.
But remember, it's Professional Facebreaker affects your other creatures dealing combat damage. You're going to want to swing at multiple players, yeah.
Yeah. And then the real nutty part is sack a creature, exile the top card of your library. You may play that card this turn.
So you sack the treasure to impulsive draw, and it creates the treasures that let you do that. They should stop creating cards that do both of these things, which is give you mana and then give you cards, because they're just too good. If you need mana to cast the cards in your hand, you use the mana part, and if you're out of it and you have too much mana, you use the card draw part.
Yeah, you would think they already learned their lesson with, what was that one Bant legend that every time a land enters the battlefield, it was from the Brawl decks?
Chulane,
yeah. Chulane, right? Cards that basically the entire package is there. Everything you need, top to bottom, is on the card itself.
Yeah. So, but anyway, that is a card that exists, and you should probably be playing it. It's very good. Yeah.
It's very good.
You always need mana, right? You always need cards, right?
Yeah. And a 2/3 Menace is probably going to be able to hit someone. And then finally, Queen Marchesa is in the Mardu colors and cares about Monarch. If all of your creatures have Menace,
that's really good.
Yeah, you can get it back really easily if someone should decide to take it from you.
And Queen Marchesa has Death Touch. Menace and Death Touch is brutal. Yeah. Because when they block with 2 creatures, they're both dying.
They're both dying,
right? Yeah. So then they just never block,
Yeah. So I think that you could also make an argument that Shanna goes in the Marchesa deck or the Sir Gwyn deck, but I think Shanna by itself is a really powerful commander because you're just constantly refueling and finding so many different synergies with all these creatures.
Yeah, a lot of times we talk about it and it seems like it's better inside the deck than not.
Commander,
but I think this card seems more powerful than Queen Marchesa.
By a long shot, I think.
So probably the opposite way around.
Very
Pretty
good.
cool. That seems like a cool one, and actually will be quite strong, but still combat based, which is fun.
Yep.
All right, we're about halfway through here. We're going to take a quick break and hear a message from our sponsors. But when we come back, we are going to talk about the commander in the deck that Jimmy is playing on the next episode of Game Night. So don't go anywhere.
Be right back.
Now, a word from our sponsor, BetterHelp.
Josh, how often do you find yourself trying to solve a problem?
I mean, what do you mean? I'm a Magic player. That's all I do all day.
Exactly. We use the problem-solving part of our brain a ton, which means that we want it to be working at peak performance.
Are you about to tell me about a superfood or something?
Later. First, I want to talk to you about BetterHelp, the simple way to get access to affordable, professional online therapy. For me, talking to a therapist hasn't just been venting about problems. It's about learning to work towards solutions.
So basically, finding the right line, but in life.
Exactly. And BetterHelp makes getting started really easy. Just fill out a brief survey and get matched with a therapist. Plus, you can switch at any time. It's convenient, accessible, affordable, and entirely online. So if you're thinking about giving therapy a try, BetterHelp is a great option.
Well, that sounds like the winning play. So are you ready to record the podcast now?
No. First up, jicama. It's the ultimate superfood.
No.
I read about it one time.
When you want to be a better problem solver, therapy can get you there. Visit BetterHelp.com/CommandZone today to get 10% off your first month. That's BETTERHELP.com/CommandZone. Again, BetterHelp.com/CommandZone.
You come to me, Lord Xander, on the day of my daughter's podcast and ask me to do you a favor? Well, I'm gonna make you an offer you can't refuse. Not in a threatening way. I've just got a really good deal. Did you know you can get RAYCON's top-tier audio quality for just half the price of other premium brands? No one should refuse an offer like that. Their new everyday earbuds look, feel, and sound fantastic. I'm using mine right now to listen to my daughter's true crime podcast. I'm in this episode. I'm in every episode. And with RAYCON's 8 hours of playtime and 32-hour battery life, your earbuds will never cut out halfway through your big murder podcast. I barely have to lift a finger to use their intuitive earbud tap functions. And with the perfect in-ear fit from their optimized gel tips, they won't even fall out if your head gets cut off. Forget about it. And in your final moments, nobody's gonna hear you scream. If they're using RAYCON's noise isolation, that is. So if you get RAYCONs of your own, it'll be just like I countered your spell, because you'll end up with 2 treasures. The RAYCONs! What, you think that's funny? I amuse you?
Go to buyraycon.com/command today to get 15% off your Raycon order. That's buyraycon.com/command to score 15% off. Again, buyraycon.com/command.
Avast me hearties, the name's Zara, renegade recruiter, and I'm looking to grow me pirate crew. For years I searched me opponent's measly hands and found only scurvy dogs. But then I started using Indeed, the hiring partner that lets you attract, interview, and hire all in one place. It'd be the only job site where you're guaranteed to find candidates that meet your must-have requirements, or you don't pay a doubloon. Indeed is your first mate at every step of the hiring process, helping to find great talent while saving time with tools like virtual interviews. Plus, there's me favorite part of Indeed, assessments. With Indeed assessments, I know that candidates have already proven their mettle before the interview. By choosing from over 100 skill tests to add to a job post, I can select for only me true perfect crewmates. With Indeed, I have a treasure map to the grandest booty of all, qualified enthusiastic employees. Yar!
Indeed's doing something no other job site has done. Now with Indeed, businesses only pay for quality applications matching the sponsored job description. Visit Indeed.com/commandzone to start hiring now. Just go to Indeed.com/commandzone. Again, Indeed.com/commandzone. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? You need Indeed.
All right, we are back, folks, and we're talking about commanders from Dominaria United.
Part 2.
Part 2.
N through Z.
N through Z.
We're on S.
Electric Boogaloo. So this next commander is the one that I played on the upcoming game nights for Dominaria United. Very exciting. It's a pretty good one. Pretty spicy. A lot of people are really excited about this card. It is not Shanid, it's Shanna. Purifying Blade. A green, a white, and a blue for a legendary creature human warrior. That's a 3/3 with a lifelink. And at the beginning of your end step, you may pay X. If you do, draw X cards. X can't be greater than the amount of life you gain this turn. So this is Well of Lost Dreams on the creature.
Yeah, and boy, a 3-mana 3/3 lifelink almost certainly can swing the turn after you play it, and just by itself pay 3 mana, draw 3 cards that turn.
Yeah.
That seems like just that seems quite good to me.
Yeah, it's very good. And you can actually just pay 1 if you wanted to, right? It just X can't be greater than the amount of life you've gained.
Right. So if you didn't want to draw a million cards, which I don't know why you wouldn't, but yeah. And then of course, it doesn't have to be the life gain off the lifelink from Shanna. It can just be any life gain.
Yeah, so I think in general, you want to actually just jam pack your deck with alternative life gain because players are going to do anything they can to not let you swing with Shanna. I found that when I was playtesting this deck, I would often leave Shanna back on defense because I would have another way to gain life and just draw 1 or 2 cards instead. I don't always need the maximum value.
Right.
Play against Shanna in Limited one time, it was a blowout.
Oh, yeah, because Lifelink's so good in Limited.
Draw the person like 9 cards.
Now, one thing to note is that at the beginning of your end step, so instant speed life gain on other players' turns doesn't do anything, right? You have to gain the life during your turn.
But as with any life gain deck, people are going to try to kill you because they know that you're going to be going the opposite direction. So just having life gain, I think, will be good in this deck. But yeah, you definitely want to be able to gain life on your turn.
That is something to know about life gain decks is people look around and they go, okay, well, that's a life gain deck. I should hit them first.
Yeah.
Because if I don't, they're going to be at 90.
And they're going to draw 20 cards.
So I got to try and keep that under control. So yeah, that's one of the downsides of life gain decks is a lot of times you're just sort of the default target early.
Yeah, so that's why I really love both Blind Obedience and Authority of the Consuls because Blind Obedience has Extort, and don't pay attention to the reminder text. It may have black in there, but it doesn't mean that you can't play this in mono-white decks or decks with just white without black.
Yeah, if it's got Extort, you could play it in monocolored as long as the casting cost in the top right corner doesn't have both colors.
Yeah, or you get the idea. We've explained this about 30 times. But because Blind Obedience and Authority Consoles both have text that say Blind Obedience, artifacts and creatures your opponents control enter the battlefield tapped. So again, you can now swing in with Shanna if you need to. And Authority Consoles says creatures your opponents control enter the battlefield tapped. And Authority Consoles is a little different. So whenever a creature enters the battlefield under an opponent's control, you gain 1 life. So you're not going to be drawing cards off of that part, but you really just will get just a bunch of life gain regularly. And more importantly, your opponents can never put up good blockers.
And remember, there's other cards in the deck. Shanna's not the only card. Well of Lost Dreams probably is in the deck and things like that. So the life gain on your opponent's turn is not nothing.
Yeah. Totally. But you also have just other ways to gain a bunch of life. Heliod Suncrowned. You can just put the Walking Ballista combo in here pretty easily.
If you want to, yeah.
But it gives another creature lifelink until end of turn. Archivist of Ogma. This card is just... Go home, white. You did it. 1 in the white for a flash 2/2. Whenever an opponent searches their library, you gain 1 life and draw a card. So it doesn't even need to be in the Shanna deck. This card just goes into every...
This and the Deep Gnome
Gnome
are like
Terramancer?
both ridiculous. Like, every time they're on battlefield, you're like, oh my god.
Yeah, they just gain 3.
What we've been asking for white, and I don't think we've complained about white in a couple of months here.
Nope.
And I think Wizards, pat yourself on the back. You did it. I think white is pretty close now to red and right up there in the mix as far as like it's got plenty of the tools that we've been asking for years.
Yeah, I've seen Heliod Suncrown decks take down CEDH tournaments because it just has...
Yeah, it has the combo, can tutor for the combo.
Yeah.
I mean, you skipped the part on Heliod where it... Whenever you gain life, you put a 1/1 counter on target or creature or enchantment you control. So with the lifelink and all the other Authority of the Consoles is a nuts card with Heliod because it's 1/1 every time somebody plays a creature.
Yeah. Pretty good. Yeah, it turns out white got what it needed thanks to Dungeons and Dragons. They did it. And then you also have stuff like Scavenging Ooze. You can use this on your turn to exile cards from graveyards, and you gain life and get plus and plus counters on Scavenging Ooze. And then you have the Soul Sisters, Soul Warden, Soul's Attendant, very similar. It's any time a creature enters the battlefield, you gain a life, which is great.
Yeah, because you play a creature, gain the life, can draw the cards. Yep.
Yeah. Pristine Talisman.
Oh, so good.
This is a 3 mana artifact. You tap it, you gain a life, and you get a mana. So typically, you would never really play these as much anymore. I know there's some contention about that, but this is a great card in this deck because on your turn, you tap it to play something, you gain a life, you can pay. Or you can even use on your end step, trigger goes on the stack, tap the Pristine Talisman, float the mana, gain a life, pay that mana into it.
I don't think you can. Because on the end step, your mana will go away.
At the beginning of your end step, you may pay X. If you do draw X cards, X can't be good. Maybe you have to already have gained some life that turn.
I don't know. We got to ask a judge on that one.
Judge! Even some board wipes are good if you give your commander Indestructible and cast Fumigate. You're going to gain a bunch of life. Parasaline, which is really good. Destroy all enchantments. You gain 1 life for each enchantment destroyed this way. And then because you have so much mana you're trying to invest at your end step, it leaves you open. So you're going to want to have ways to generate a bunch of mana. Mirari's Wake is a great way to double up all your mana, but Wilderness Reclamation and Seaborn Muse are really, I think, where you want to be at. Go to your end step, pay for all the life you gain, draw all those cards, and then untap all those lands. Be open and be able to do something else.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense because, you're often going to want to spend as much mana as you can to draw as many cards as possible.
Yeah.
So... And I hate being tapped out on other players' turns.
Yeah, it feels bad, especially when you're in Bant, which has so many great instant speed interaction spells. Sphinx of the Second Sun also gives you an additional untap phase. So this is a way for you to be like, I'm just going to invest a ton of mana, cast all my stuff, and then untap all my lands, and then be able to spend mana into Shanna's ability at the end.
Yeah, a lot like Wilderness Reclamation, actually.
Yeah, which is pretty fun. And then I think you're actually even playing some of the gates, or not the gates, the tap lands that give you a life, the life lands. Because you play that, gain a life, there goes your card draw. Pretty nice.
Maybe a couple bounce lands. You could always replay them.
Yeah.
Yeah, Radiant Fountain's a really good one. Seraph Sanctuary.
Yep. Both of those, you will just gain a life when they enter the battlefield, and they come in untapped. Radiant Fountain gives you 2 life. Seraph Sanctuary gives you 1. And if you're playing an Angel deck, then you're going to get a bunch more life off Seraph Sanctuary.
It's amazing how some, quote unquote, don't get mad at me, bad cards, like cards that we wouldn't normally play. How about that?
Cards that Josh and I would not normally play. You are totally welcome to play them.
Do whatever you want. We're just evaluating the cards based on, our normal evaluation.
That we've been doing for 7 years.
Yeah, exactly. But life lands generally not good enough these days for us to play in our decks, and we don't see them very often, but when you add draw a card to something, it all of a sudden gets a lot better, right?
Yeah. Or you play all the life lands and then Amulet of Vigor.
Yeah.
Because
Boom.
there you go.
There you go.
And then you have some win cons. Obviously, Aetherflex Reservoir is the big one.
Just
Death Star him
Gotta
out.
be one of the best cards in the deck because you're obviously, very often going to be above that 50-point life total.
Totally. And then even Alhamrat's Archive, which is going to give you twice as much life, and then every time
Draws twice as many cards.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. So if you
really
gain 2 life, that's really 4. You pay 4 mana, you really draw 8 cards.
Yeah.
Holy cow. That's
You just need to do that one time.
That feels...
And then you're in a winning position. And then Blossoming Bog Beast, this is the Craterhoof of the deck. Whenever it attacks, you gain 2 life, then creatures you control gain trample and +X, where X is the amount of life you gain this turn.
Oh, and that happens every single time, not like Craterhoof, which only happens once.
Correct. Yeah.
And this is on a 5-drop.
On a 5-drop.
That seems good. Doesn't have haste, though.
No, not yet. And then there's some combos. So with Blossoming Bog Beast, you can play Illusions of Grandeur or Delusions of Mediocrity. These are 2 cards that are ridiculous. So Illusions of Grandeur is 3 in the blue with a cumulative upkeep of 2. When it enters the battlefield, you gain 20 life. And then when it leaves the battlefield, you lose 20 life. So with Blossoming Bog Beast, if you play Illusions and swing, you're going to get +22 and trample to all your creatures.
And also, you can basically draw as many cards as you want for 1 mana piece.
Yeah, and then Delusions of Mediocrity is just the same version. It's 3 in the blue, but you gain 10 life, doesn't have a cumulative upkeep. When it leaves the battlefield, you lose 10 life. So you combine those with cards like Ezra Channeler, which is creature spells you cast cost X less for X is the amount of life you gain this turn. That's just a free Eldrazi with Delusions of Mediocrity. Or Accomplished Alchemist, which you tap to add X mana of any one color, where X is the amount of life you gain this turn.
That's great. Ramp on your life gain. Like it.
So I think those are the kind of combos you're trying to go for to win the game. You're just drawing into those. You're gaining a bunch of life, and then you're swinging and you're killing everyone. And if you really want to, you can play Stax version of this deck.
Now, this isn't what you did for game nights, right?
No. Why would I? I never played Stax.
Our editors would try and stab you with something because that would make for a 19-hour-long game.
Ugh. Maybe someday if I'm trying to build something really competitive and mean, I'd build a Stax deck, but otherwise...
Maybe for extra turns, not for game nights.
Yeah, not for game nights. So like Derevi, just look at any of those decks. You can play a similar strategy. And in this case, you're just locking everyone down. You're hitting them with your Shanna. You're drawing a bunch of cards, and you're just really getting the engine going. But don't do that.
I mean, you can if your playgroup's cool with it.
Yeah.
All right, the next one is... This is a throwback to an old character, but it's a little bit of a weird design.
Yeah.
So it's Solkanar the Tainted. You may remember Solkanar the Swamp King is an OG legend from the old days. This is 2 in Grixis, so 2 blue, black, and red for a 5/5 elemental demon. At the beginning of your end step, choose one that hasn't been chosen. Draw a card. Each opponent loses 2 life and you gain 2 life. Solkanar deals 3 damage to up to 1 target creature or planeswalker. And then, the weird one, exile Solkanar, then return it to the battlefield under an opponent's control.
So it's kind of like Bloodforge Battle or whatever. You're just passing this guy around after you do the other abilities.
Yeah, so you get the 3 good things, and then on the 4th one, your opponent gets it, one of them, and then presumably, if the game lasts forever, they get the 3 good things and have to give it, not even back to you, but just to another opponent. It doesn't seem very good, and spoiler alert, it is not very good. As far as I could tell, and I couldn't find anything really super interesting to do with it. This could be good, though. I think, I like to earmark a few cards per set as hey, if you're the player in your playgroup that everybody complains about because your decks are too good. And we get these emails from people saying, my playgroup always kills me first. It's usually because they've learned if they don't do that, you're going to win every time. Well, Solkanar is one of those decks that if you built along the theme of Solkanar, didn't just put a CEDH shell onto this Grixis commander and never play the commander. But if you try and play into what Solkanar is doing, it's hard for this deck to be extremely powerful, I think.
Because you have to give Solkanar away.
Yeah, well, or
unless you're trying to
get around it. You got to get around it, not give them away. So yeah, let's talk about Solkanar's ability here. I think upgrading your upkeep. So Paradox Haze gives you 2 upkeeps. Listen, if you just read Solkanar, let's say you took away the 4th ability, Jimmy. So it only has just at the beginning of your upkeep, choose one of these things.
End step.
Oh, sorry, of your end step, choose one of these things. Draw a card, deal 2 to everybody you gain 2, or deal 3 to something. Would you even still play this card? It's a 5-mana 5/5 that
5-mana 5/5 wait till your end step to draw a card is not so hot.
Right? It's I think Mold Drifter is just better. Probably. It doesn't do it every turn, but you need 2 turns for it to be...
Well, it's not even it deals 3 damage to a creature or planeswalker, not even a player. You're only draining everyone for 2. There's a lot. This is Grixis. There's so many good cards in this.
I'm sure the
combination.
color's fine, but this card just doesn't do a lot, and I think it's just kind of underpowered. And then the fact that they're like simultaneously, we're also going to have a downside on this card is kind of weird. It's probably for limited because it's a mythic, and in limited it seems pretty good.
Or if you're running like that, like a deck that's filled with like Liliana's Contract, whatever that one is, where you lose the game if you get to the last ability.
Sure.
Like you'd be playing that kind of deck. It's like, cool, I want to try everyone to do all the abilities, but the last one.
Right, it's like a theme.
Yeah.
So anyway, I was just trying to figure out ways like, okay, just to make the ability good, I want 2 of these things on my end step, right? So, I said Paradox Haze, but it's end step, so Paradox Haze is no good.
Yeah.
Strionic Resonator, Lithoform Engine, they'll allow you to double up that trigger. Does cost you mana.
2 mana, yeah.
Yeah, so it's questionable of how to like squeeze out more like value out of Solkanar's ability even.
Yeah.
And like if he's 5 mana, 5/5, draw 2 cards at your end step, even if you could figure out a way to do that, it's...
No, that's 7 mana because you have to pay 2 mana to the ability.
it's like still questionable. So it's hard to make Solkanar busted. And then the other part is you're going to eventually have to give it away. So how do I avoid giving him away? And the most obvious way is like bounce, flicker, or blink.
Yeah.
Flicker or blink being preferable so you don't have to recast. And there's, of course, a bunch of ways to do that. Conjurer's Closet, Thassa Deep Dwelling, sort of Hearth and Home. Those are ways to just blink it so that you reset it, and now you can just draw a card every turn or deal 3 to something every turn. Erratic Portal, Crystal Shard can both bounce it so you can replay it. And Erratic Portal, Crystal Shard are cards that are very annoying to play against for your opponents. They always have to leave 1 or 2 mana up if they don't want a thing to get bounced. So those are powerful cards to just kind of have. You can also Sundial of the Infinite or Obeka to end the turn on the turn where you have to give it away.
Okay.
But the problem with that is it's not a new permanent. So you can't choose any of the other modes for the rest of the game.
It just becomes a 5 mana 5/5.
Yeah, so that doesn't really help you that much because you can't draw cards or anything with it anymore because you've already chosen those modes. It has to get exiled, killed, bounced to your hand, and replayed so that it's a new permanent so you can start getting the value out of it again. Basically, I think I sort of failed on this one to find...
I can't even think of anything, and I love these colors.
Yeah, anything that... Yeah, of course, you could build just a regular Grixis Spellslinger Shell or something around and just put Solkanar at the head, but it doesn't really interact with the deck with any synergy. But I don't think, that's that interesting to do with this particular card. I guess you could do it so people think like, Solkanar, that's bad. I'm not going to worry about that deck as like a head fake. But anyway, that's what I came up with.
Yeah, Solkanar, I don't blame you. It doesn't seem terribly exciting. It seems just fun. It could be fun but even then you're waiting till turn 5 to play it, or maybe turn 3 or 4 if you're going fast. And then you still have to wait 3 more turn rotations. Maybe it's just extra turn spells is how you make it powerful.
Yeah, I heard extra turn spells are good.
Yeah.
People don't generally like that, though.
No, it's true.
All right, on to the next one, which is Soul of Windgrace. Spoiler alert, this is the deck that Sam from Rhystic Studies plays on the upcoming episode of Game Night. So we've now announced all the players and their decks. I'll recap it here. Rachel Weeks is playing Dahada. Jimmy's playing Shanna. Sam is playing Soul of Windgrace, and I am playing... I don't know if we've...
no, we haven't, because it's going to be on the future.
I'm playing Torwaki, which is one of the box toppers. Because
yeah.
I think that episode will come out after the Game Nights episode. So, so Soul of Windgrace is a Jund Lands Matter deck. It is, as you would expect, something that says Windgrace on it to be. It is 1 black, red, and green. So 4 mana for a 5/4 cat avatar.
Meow.
Whenever Soul of Windgrace enters the battlefield or attacks, you may put a land card from a graveyard and onto the battlefield tapped under your control from a graveyard.
Oh.
Yep. Has 3 activated abilities. The first one, pay a green and discard a land card, gain 3 life. Pay 1 and a red and discard a land card, draw a card. Why that's on the red one, I don't know. Pay 2 and a black, discard a land card. Soul of Windgrace gains indestructible until end of turn. Tap it. It's interesting because at least the green life gain one makes sense to me, but red is not known
Maybe
for drawing
it's because it's
cards.
kind of like looting. Or rummaging, because you're discarding then drawing.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. That makes sense.
Has to be a land,
That
though.
makes sense to me. Okay. So Soul of Windgrace is lands matter, but particularly discarding lands. So you want lands in your hands to get its effect, and then it has the ability, once you've discarded to one of its abilities, it attacks, and then, or you cast it, but I guess you couldn't have discarded to its ability if you hadn't cast it yet. Anyway, it attacks and gets the land that you discard back onto the battlefield. So it's a ramp card in general. I think the play pattern tells you that when you cast Soul of Windgrace, you want to get full value, so you want a land to be in a graveyard. Remember, it can be from your opponents, but
It does come back tapped.
Yeah.
So
I don't think you can count on your opponents always having a land. It depends
Yeah.
on your play group. If there's a ton of fetch lands and things, maybe you could. But in general, I think you want to build your deck so that you can put lands in the graveyard prior to casting Soul of Windgrace. And there's a million ways to do this. Fetch lands will obviously do it. It doesn't have to be the expensive ones either. It can be the Evolving Wilds of the world. But also you can use the Bloodstained Mires and everything like that. There are spells that do it. So like Harrow and Crop Rotation.
yeah, great spells.
Yeah, and they both ramp you. Oh, sorry, Crop Rotation doesn't. But it allows you to go find any land if you're Crop Rotation, and then Harrow your up a land. So that helps you get to Soul of Windgrace faster, gets a land in your graveyard that it can get back out onto the battlefield. Of course, there's also like cycling lands that you could just cycle early, like a Barren Moor or a Canyon Slough or something like that, and that will allow you to have a land in your
Early on, yeah.
Yeah, in your
Smooth
graveyard.
out an early turn.
Yeah, and they replace themselves, so it doesn't cost you the card. It just is. If you cycle a Barren Moor, it's kind of like a 1-mana Rampant Growth when you play Soul of Windgrace, right?
Yeah, because it does come in tapped,
Yeah.
and you get the land back.
But it costs you 1 mana. So
And you
then-
drew a card to replace it, yeah.
Yep. And then, of course, red is very good at just getting things into the graveyard because of Thrill of Possibilities and Faithless Looting.
Yeah.
And if you notice that we mentioned those two cards a lot, it's probably because they're very good and you should play them in a lot of red decks. I think those get underrated by newer players because it doesn't look like you've gained much advantage. But just choosing what it is that you're putting into your graveyard is very powerful.
So good.
Yeah, even if you're never getting anything back from your graveyard, it's often just a land. Like, I have too many lands in my hand, and if
Yeah.
you build your decks well, you're trying not to miss land drops, which means sometimes you get glutted with lands, and these allow you to just, turn those lands into potential other cards.
What does that feel like?
And then, of course, you're putting a lot of lands in your graveyard. You're discarding lands. You've got all these ways to get lands into the graveyard before you cast Soul of Windgrace and after. Crucible of Worlds, Ramineth Excavator allow you to play those lands out of your graveyard.
Ancient Green Warden as well does the same thing.
The original Lord Windgrace, the Planeswalker will get lands out of your graveyard. I mean, and now we're in the realm of like just the regular Lands Matter deck.
Now we're just playing a Lord Windgrace deck.
Yeah, kind of. And of course, all the Lands Matter decks, they want to play additional lands, especially when you've got fetch lands and things that are just going to continuously go to your graveyard and you can play them with Crucible of Worlds. So Azusa, Dryad of the Elysian Grove, Exploration, there's a million cards like this, Wayward Swordtooth and everything else that allow you to just, now you're playing 2, 3, 4 lands per turn.
Getting ahead of everyone.
Yeah.
Windgrace ramped you as well, and you have land to discard and play them from the graveyard. Yeah, you just have a lot of options here.
Now
This deck is running like, what, 45 lands?
Yeah, probably, because you need to have lands in hand to discard, so you never want to be without some lands in your hand. Yeah, so 45 is probably where you want to be
Yeah,
at.
your lands are like spells almost in a way now.
So now you have your land engine going, right? Like, I got plenty of them. I can play a lot of them. I can play them from my graveyard. I can get them out of my graveyard. How do you turn that into a win? Because it can easily become like that Enchantress deck we were talking about, Jimmy. And a lot of the ways that decks do this is like with landfall triggers. So you're playing Lotus Cobra, but more importantly, things like Rampaging Baloth, Scoot Swarm, things that my landfall starts to turn into tokens or big creatures or
a billion Scoot Swarms.
Yeah, things that allow me to start to turn that into winning the game. You weaponize this merry-go-round of like land in hand, land in graveyard, land on battlefield, right? You're just doing that merry-go-round and you weaponize it. Another way to weaponize it that's interesting and maybe a little different than, not the exact same, at least, as all other Lands Matter decks, is this is a discard-themed Lands Matter deck.
Yeah.
So the discard-themed payoff cards could be good, like Bone Miser, Surly Badgersaur. These are cards that say when you discard a card, you get some kind of value off of it. You get extra mana, you get tokens, you kill things, whatever.
Right.
Yeah. And then, of course, like Gitrog Monster seems like probably the best card in the deck.
Yeah.
Because every time a land enters your battlefield from anywhere, you draw a card.
You can play an additional land.
Gitrog's already a CEDH broken level card. So if you didn't want to build that broken deck, but just want to put that in here as like a quote unquote fair card in the deck, I think that's pretty good.
Yeah, for sure.
Containment Construct.
Yeah, new card from Kamigawa Neon Dynasty. It's 2 mana. Whenever you discard a card, you may exile it from your graveyard. If you do, you can play that card this turn. So that includes your lands.
Yeah, so you discard 2 Soul of Windgrace's ability.
You get an effect.
And then you just play that as your land drop for turn. Then it attacks. You already had another land in your graveyard. Put that on the battlefield tapped.
Yeesh.
Discard synergy like Archfiend of Ifnir, which whenever you cycle or discard a card, you put a -1/-1 counter on each creature your opponents control.
Yeah.
And you will be playing cycling lands and things like that.
Okay.
Yeah. So I think
simple.
this deck, is very powerful and is very cool. These are fun decks to play. I think most players like have a lands deck these days. So if you don't have one or you really like that archetype, I think this is going to be right up there with the rest of them. But it's not like breaking a ton of new ground.
I don't have one. Maybe it's time.
Maybe it's time. Oh, man.
Oh, what?
I boomeranged it. It was in the exact spot. Can't do it twice. Couldn't do it twice.
Nah, thank goodness. If you did, then I would be like, deja vu. What'd you say?
All over again.
We're in the Matrix. All right. Next up, it's time for another blue-white legendary. I've talked a lot about blue-white legendaries in the past.
I'm just realizing that I must have thrown my last page because I don't have it anymore.
Oh, you don't?
Yeah.
Here, we can share.
We'll share later. Okay. All right.
You have what, 4 left?
Oh, this is an important story character that we're on, too.
Is it? Uh-oh, I don't know that. Oh, wait, I have your last page.
Oh, that's why.
Yeah. Okay.
You stole it.
Yeah, that's right. You were being paranoid, like Sten, paranoid partisan. So this is another entry into my lexicon of what the heck does blue-white do outside of being pure stacks or pure flyers and just card draw control, yeah. And I think this actually is one of those cards that is very flexible. It's actually one of the better entries into the lexicon.
This is them saying, we don't know what it does either. You figure it out, but this will interact with almost any strategy you want to come up with.
Yeah, so it's white and blue for a 2/2 human wizard. As Sten enters the battlefield, choose a card type other than creature or land, and spells you cast of the chosen type cost 1 less to cast. And then you can pay 1 white and a blue to exile Sten and return it to the battlefield under its owner's control at the beginning of the next end step. So you can reset the ability for 3 mana.
So if you said instance and you're like, man, I got a lot of sorceries in my hand.
Yeah, and you'd be like, maybe I just built the deck wrong.
I'll just
reset it. So you could flicker it over and over again. This is a 2-mana commander, so this actually, I think, has a lot of flexibility to also be a competitive commander, which some people are talking about.
Just reducing the cost on stuff in CEDH seems quite good, yeah.
Especially because this acts as... well, let's first talk about the sort of turn order. So turns 1, 2, and 3 are all very important for Sten decks, because some decks can play this on turn 1 with like one of the Chrome Moxes or whatever. Mm-hmm. Most decks will play on turn 2, and turn 3... you're going to have the effect.
Start getting the discount.
Yeah, even turn 2, right?
Yeah.
So all of those turns will be affected potentially by Sten's ability and what you choose for its effects. So typically, I think artifacts are going to be your number 1 choice. And then you have instants and sorceries, but artifacts are the best because some artifacts cost 1 mana, and then you can play them for free.
It reduces it to 0. There's not very many instant sorceries that
just
don't have colored mana in there. Yeah.
So Sten in an artifact deck basically gives you the same discount as a Foundry Inspector, which costs 3 mana, but now you get down on 2. So this instantly combos with Sensei's Divining Top, which costs 1, and Reality Chip, which once it is attached to a creature, you can play lands and cast spells from the top of your library. So you have Reality Chip on Sten,
Sensei's Divining top for free.
Tap it, draw a card, put the top back on top of your deck, cast it for free. You can draw your whole deck out.
Yep.
And if you're in that sort of artifact build, then this is another effect that's like Cloud Key or Ethereum Sculptor that's going to just give you a huge discount.
And a lot of like artifact decks, especially combo ones, are trying to get to the point where like their 2 and 3 drop artifacts are free, and then they can really just start going nuts.
Yeah, and then you're just dumping everything on using Scrap Trawler. You just watch Josh's deck from Baldur's Gate.
Yeah, the CLB episode, you see me start to do sort of similar things, yeah.
Yeah, so Sten just allows you to do that faster because it's, again, a 2-mana spell that you can probably play on turn 1 in the right deck. And then if you're going to go, say, like, instants or sorceries, then you have cards like Snap, which now just costs 1 blue mana to return a creature to its owner's hand. You can untap up to 2 lands.
Oh, so you gain mana on it?
Same with Frantic Search. You can untap up to 3 lands now for 2 mana. And if you're doing some sort of storm build, then Brain Freeze just costs 1 blue, and you're, because of the discount, right, you're just spell slinging over and over and over again. And that might be a way to try and win the game from there. Mm-hmm. Solve the Equation is a sorcery. Again, you can't choose instant and sorceries. You have to choose instant or sorcery. Solve the Equation is just a new tutor for spells. Time Warp now costs 4 mana. Pretty good. And then you have enchantments. These aren't as exciting if you want to name them with Sten, because I think they're more. It's just more about getting a little bit of value. So then, like on turn,
it's hard to turn this into something completely broken. It's just like
or even that powerful. Honestly,
it's just 25% more efficient.
Yeah, and then what is your Is your deck entirely enchantments? Probably not. So you have like Stand on turn 2 means Smothering Tithe on turn 3, Teferi's Ageless Insight on turn 3, Anointed Procession on turn 3. There's a lot of powerful 4-drops, so that's why I include the enchantment category.
Got it.
If you want to get there. You can also go Super Friends. You can name Planeswalkers. So there are 73 playable Planeswalkers in blue, white, or colorless. Wow. But they're all over the place.
They're all Teferis.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing, right? You have a Tezzeret and then a Johnny, and those two planeswalkers couldn't be more different in terms of what they're trying to do. So it might take some configuring to make it into a workable deck. So if you want to go like a creature deck with planeswalkers, don't forget, Sten can't reduce creature costs. So you would be like heavy planeswalkers with some creatures maybe. You could do Wandering Empire, Elspeth Sun's Champion. If you want to go control, then it is Teferi time.
Just play all 17 Teferis.
Yeah, so Teferi Time Raveler and Displacer Kitten is also one that could potentially go infinite if you have a Soul Ring, because you cast the Soul Ring, you tap it for 2, Displacer Kitten is going to exile Teferi, it's going to bounce it, and then you return the Soul Ring to your hand, draw a card, play the Soul Ring for free, tap it for 2, Displacer Kitten is going to just bounce Teferi again, draw your whole deck. Yeah, and then, you have like Narset, Parter Veils, whatever. There's a lot to choose from. So how to win?
That is the question always with Azorius, isn't it?
Yep.
Did you come up with an answer?
Not really.
I never have really either.
You got
Flyers? I
Propaganda,
don't know.
Ghostly Prison, you fly over.
That's not how to win.
Or you go enter the battlefield, flicker value with some tricky protection spells. Like you got your Bragos out there. You could also just do pure stacks with an infinite combo that we talked about.
Yep.
And just end it with Thoracle.
Shorokai. I usually win my Shorokai games as a token deck.
There you go. I think this actually works well in Shorokai because it's a reducer for your artifacts. Yeah. It would be good in Brago. It would be good in Denry Klin, which is a new card as well. So a lot of potentials to fit Sten into a deck. And I think it's one of those things where if you're playing Sten as the commander, you need to choose what is the thing you're going to reduce the cost of. They're going to be the most in your deck. If it's in another deck, you can draw Sten, look at your hand and go, sorceries, play it, name it, cheaper.
But probably if Sten's in another deck, you want your deck in general to have one category.
Yeah.
Artifacts, instants, sorceries that you clearly like know that it's going to be good. Because the last thing you want to do is like play them naming a thing that you've only got 7 of in your deck.
Yeah, then you get a 1 mana reduction one time. So I think
it's just not worth a card. Like you should play anything else.
Yeah, it only makes sense in Brago because then you can flicker it every turn and then choose something new based on your hand. But otherwise, yeah, if it's in a Shorokai deck, you're probably naming artifacts.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's Sten in a nutshell. You get to choose the direction to go with it, but at the end, you still have a lot of trouble winning.
Just like your average Azorius deck.
Yeah.
Now, I do have an Azorius deck, and the Shorokai deck is quite good, but yeah.
But that's because Shorokai itself is just like, you get to do a lot.
And does give you the win con of like, because if you just make 12 1/1s, that's a way to win eventually.
And draw 50 cards as a result, yeah.
All right. Good old Sten. Now we're up to Varric, Warped Sengir. This is another interesting one, but one that maybe reads a little better than it ends up being.
I like this one a lot.
Yeah, it reads really cool, and then you start looking into it and you realize, similar to Ratadrabik, there's not as many options for it as you think. So Varric Warped Sengir is 1, a white and a black for a 2/2 vampire, has flying, death touch, and lifelink, so it is a vampire nighthawk, except with an additional ability.
Yeah.
Whenever you activate an ability that isn't a mana ability, if life was paid to activate it, you may pay that much life again. If you do copy that ability, you may choose new targets for the copy.
Okay.
So this is Orzhov. Activated abilities where you pay life matter. The biggest thing immediately that everyone noticed when they read Varric is that fetch lands, and the fetch lands we're talking about are like what are commonly referred to as fetch lands, where you pay a life and then go search your library for well, that's paying a life, which means you'll go search your library for 2 lands.
For 2 life, hey.
That is insane.
Yeah, crack a fetch land, get 2 lands for 2 life. You're ramping.
That's 0 mana rampant growths.
Pretty good.
And the rampant growths find shock lands and dual lands and have lands and triumphs, right?
Not triumphs for Varric.
Oh, yeah, right. He's only a dual. Well, whatever. They find better than basic lands. So
I mean, maybe Varric goes into a deck where you're constantly cracking fetch lands.
like, would you pay a life, 1 life, Jimmy, for a rampant growth?
Absolutely.
No mana?
Yeah. Are you kidding me? If every one of my fetch lands said get 2 lands, pay 2 life,
That's insane.
that is nuts, yeah.
Fetch lands would be worth even more than they are now.
Yeah.
So that's one of the, it's probably the single best thing about Varric is like you're just going to have a lot of mana if you have all the fetch lands and that are available and can put them in the deck. And then of course, because you're going to be like doing that, you're going to want to replay those fetch lands. So Crucible of Worlds now goes in this deck. And then you can do the old trick that I used to talk about, which is like Savine's Reclamation. You have a couple fetch lands, you get them back out with Savine's Reclamation. It's a lot better when they are worth 2 more lands on the battlefield, right?
Yeah, totally.
And then that gives you the extra mana to flash back Savine's Reclamation. So after a couple of turns, I don't think it's going to be crazy to just have more lands than even like a lands deck has.
This is a white-black deck, by the way. This is very unusual.
Yeah, and then you can also play the brought backs of the world and the cosmic interventions, which if you can save up a couple of fetch lands, crack them on the same turn, get 4 lands into play. Remember, those lands are untapped because, Polluted Delta brings lands into play untapped.
Yeah.
Now Brought Back brings back the 2 fetch lands. Again, you do it again. That's 8 lands in 1 turn from a Brought Back that costs you 2 mana.
In white-black.
Yeah. So there's a lot of nutso things as far as that's concerned. So that alone does make very, very powerful. But then you start looking at the life-paying abilities on other cards that you're going to now try and copy. So there are somewhere around 20 to 25 cards in these colors that have activated abilities. Remember, it has to be activated. It can't be triggered. So you can't say when or whenever or whatever. This is like you...
Yeah, pay 2 life, do this thing.
Yeah. And that's not very many, 20 to 25, right? Like if all of them are good, you could put all those in the deck, and we usually say around 25 of something, you have a theme and you're built around it now.
Right.
And a lot of the pay life things are just not that great. So like regenerate a creature. Well, let's say it says 2 life to regenerate a creature. How much valuable is it to pay 2 more life and regenerate it twice?
Yeah, you're not going to do it twice.
You don't need the second one, right? Look at Aetherflux Reservoir. That has a pay life thing. Pay 50 life. Deal 50 damage to target creature. Well, guess what? You can already pay 50 life and do it again if you want to.
Right. You don't need to.
You don't need to copy it with Varric. So there's a pay life ability that like Varric doesn't interact with very well. There's
Varric
stuff like,
well.
Yeah. There's stuff like Unspeakable Symbol, which you pay 3 life and you put a 1/1 counter on target creature.
But you could just do it again, yeah.
Yeah, you can already copy that if you want to. Then it also does not work with mana abilities. So things like Blood Celebrant, which is pay a black and a life and create a mana of any color. Well, you can't do that twice.
Because it's a mana ability.
Yeah. Old school Boseiju, pay a life, add 1 mana, and it makes your instant or sorcery that you cast with it uncounterable. Can't do that.
Right.
All the Mana Lord, pay a life, get
Add
a mana,
mana.
make something haste.
Can't do that.
it.
Pay 3 life in that case.
Yeah, so you really whittle it down, and there's not as many as you think there would be. What you're really looking for are pay life abilities that have other costs plus the pay life. So now when you pay the extra life to copy it, the other costs are your stuff you're not paying. And that's where you're sort of getting a reduction on costs and getting a savings and sort of, breaking the card, as it were. So let's go through some of those abilities. There's card draw. Stuff
Everyone's
like
favorite.
Underworld Connections. You enchant a land, and then you tap the land and pay 1 life and draw a card. And this is actually saving you on the tapping of the land.
Right.
Because you couldn't tap it twice unless you could untap it somehow, and also it's kind of virtually cost you a mana. So now it's tap a land, pay 2 life, draw 2 cards.
Okay. But makes that way better than before.
Greed, Erebos, Argol's Bloodfast all cost mana plus life to draw a card. Now it's mana plus more life to draw twice as many cards, but...
Your life is going to be dipping in this deck, so you have to put some life gain in there.
But one thing we know is life instead of mana is just one of the more powerful things you can ever do, and a lot of cards that do that are banned or considered, like Keurig and things, considered very powerful.
Right.
Channel.
Right.
War Room's another one you pay life.
Equal to your commander's colors and the commander's mana cost.
Yep, so that could sort of help you on the mana that you have to pay. You couldn't tap War Room twice.
Right.
Again, there's stuff like Recursion, Yawgmoth. Oh, sorry, Yawgmoth's removal. Sorry, Recursion is Priest of Fell.
Yawgmoth is pay a life draw or
sack creature, put a 1/1 counter on target creature and draw a card.
Yeah, so you
card
can,
draw and removal.
Yeah, so you only need to sacrifice 1 creature and you pay 2 life to do 2 things and draw 2 cards.
Yeah, so anytime you're skipping an extra sacrifice of a creature, that seems very good.
Yeah, Yawgmoth is now the best card in the deck.
Yeah, sorry, so that was meant under the card draw category. And now we move on to the recursion category. There's Priest of Fell Rites. You tap it, pay 3 life, sacrifice the priest, return target creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield, activate only as a sorcery. Get 2 creatures from the graveyard onto the battlefield.
6 life.
Yep. And then it has Unearth, so you could do it again.
Yeah.
Later. Chainer, the original, which is play black, and 3 life, and then you put a creature card from your graveyard onto the battlefield.
Nightmare,
Yeah, so 3 mana and 6 life, get 2 creatures. Strands of Night is an enchantment. You pay black, and 2 life, sacrifice a swamp, return target creature from your graveyard to the battlefield. Well, it gets a lot better when it's only sacrifice 1 swamp, not 2, to get 2 creatures.
Okay.
So then there's stuff there's removal stuff, Sinister Concoction. You pay a life, sack it, put the top card of your library in your graveyard, and then destroy target creature.
Okay.
Or sorry, discard a card and sacrifice Sinister Concoction.
That's a lot of, that's a bit.
But if it's black, pay a life, mill a card, sack it, discard a card, but destroy 2 creatures?
Yeah.
Not the worst. Villainous Broker of Blood is kind of a payoff for paying life in general because you draw that many cards, and also also has black, pay 2 life, target creature gets -1/-1. So now it's black, pay 4 life, target creature gets -1/-1 twice, and then draw 4 cards.
Okay, pretty good.
Villainous is an 8-drop though, so of course you'd expect it to be good. Font of Agonies is a removal spell that also gets counters as you pay life for anything, and then you pay 1 and a black and remove 4 counters from the Font of Agonies to destroy a creature. So you're paying so much life in this deck that it's not crazy that Font of Agonies will just be at any time pay 2 mana, destroy anything. You just have enough counters.
Right.
So then there's finally the curious case of Keurig.
I like this. Good title.
Which some people call Crick. So Keurig is very interesting with Varric and sort of single-handedly makes it the whole deck sort of more interesting. Because Keurig has this weird ability that says for each black mana in a cost, including activated abilities, you may pay 2 life rather than pay that mana.
Oh, okay. So it's alternative. It changes the casting.
Yeah, so it turns all black mana symbols into Phyrexian mana, black mana symbols, right? So for instance, Sir Conrad, if Sir Conrad's on the battlefield and Keurig is on the battlefield as well, Sir Conrad's ability normally reads 1 and a black, each player mills a card. Well, Keurig makes it read 1 and a Phyrexian black, each player mills a card. So if you choose to pay the black with the life, now you're paying 1 and 2 life for each player mills a card. Well, Varric says, oh, you paid life for an activated ability.
You can double it.
You can double it. So now it's 1 for life, each player mills 2 cards.
Okay.
Because of the, replacement effects or alternate costs on both of the things. That means like attrition, which normally says black, sack a creature, destroy target non-black creature. Now says pay 2 life, pay 4 life, sack a creature, destroy 2 non-black creatures.
Okay.
Even cycling works because that is an activated ability.
Oh, he's cycling for just 2 life instead on Barrenmore?
Yeah, so Barrenmore usually says pay a black, cycle it. Now it says pay 4 life, discard it, draw 2 cards, because discard's part of the cost.
Right.
Yeah. So Keurig, easily the best card in this deck. The problem is if you build around Keurig's ability, and it's, I'm going to put a bunch of activated abilities that require black mana
That's
in
a non-bow with the rest of your commander, yeah.
Yeah, then you're like, well, what if I don't get Keurig, or they kill it, or they exile it, or something, and now all of a sudden all these other things. I mean, Barrenmore's still fine, right?
Yeah.
But do you want Sir Conrad in your deck? So anyway... Yeah, it's interesting. I think Varric is cool and going to be a cool deck, but it doesn't have as much variety of what you're going to be able to do. So probably there's going to be a couple of very powerful things, and you're mostly going to see that just from lack of other options.
I know what I'm going to do.
What's that?
Just get 8 lands out and then play Torment of Hailfire by turn 5.
Just like, all I'm going to do is the fetch land part of it.
Yeah, that seems real
Varric
powerful.
as a ramp spell.
Can you imagine? Yeah. Or the white-black one that brings you back life when you cast it. I forget the name of that one. But,
and that alone is actually pretty powerful and interesting, and may make it so the deck is just like an Orzhov deck.
Yeah.
And Varric is just like, all Varric really says is, you're going to have a ton of lands in play.
Could you maybe make this another Shadowborn Apostles deck?
Interesting.
Because there is that demon that you want to fetch out, right? If you could maybe get Villainous.
Or Razakath works pretty well too. Yeah, maybe. Yeah, just to have the extra mana. It doesn't give you the recursion on the Shadowborn Apostles, but if you did get Keurig, you could double get 2 demons. I don't know. I think I'd keep Athreos for the recursion, but you never know.
You never know.
All right, we're on to the last one here. And this one I'm going to take as well because I almost built this deck for game night.
Yeah, you almost got there. It's an interesting card.
Yeah, I decided the path that I was going down and the path that kind of wants you to go down is mean, and that's kind of why I pivoted to Torwaki.
I'll read the card.
Yep.
It is Zur, Eternal Schemer. By the way, when we did the alphabet thing, I didn't think we'd guaranteed hit a Z.
Yeah, and to Z.
It's kind of cool.
Yeah.
It's white, blue, black for a 1/4 legendary creature, flying human wizard. Enchantment creatures you control have Death Touch, Lifelink, and Hexproof. And then you can pay 1 in the white. Target non-aura enchantment you control becomes a creature in addition to its other types and has base power and base toughness, each equal to its mana value. So if you have a 4-mana enchantment out, you pay 1 in the white, it becomes a 4/4. And it has Death Touch, Lifelink, and Hexproof thanks to Zur.
And another important thing to note is Zur does not say until end of turn.
That's right.
So it becomes a creature, quote unquote, permanently.
Yeah.
There's
unless
no,
you flicker it or find another way to return to the battlefield.
Yep. There's no time limitation on it.
Okay.
All right. So this is going to be an enchantment deck, right? Like Xur doesn't care about any other type but enchantment. Non-aura enchantment. Yep. So you're going to play your Mesa Enchantress. Probably things like Sigil of the Empty Throne, Starfield Mystic, normal white Enchantress cards. There aren't as many blue and black ones. But there's the Constellation mechanic, which exists, and black is pretty good at it. So Doomwake Giant, which gives creatures your opponent's control -1/-1 until end of turn whenever an enchantment enters the battlefield. Constellation is just a mechanic that cares about enchantments entering. Underworld Coinsmith is kind of like what is that?
Draws you a card?
Well, whenever another enchantment enters the battlefield under control, you gain life. That's like a Soul Sister, but for enchantments. Also has activated ability to drain opponents, to just make them lose 1 life.
Yeah, and you have to pay a life to do it.
Yeah, it works for Varric as well, but not great.
That's funny, yeah.
Then, of course, you can play creatures that are enchantments that are already creatures, and Xur just will give them the stuff, the Death Touch, the Lifelink, and the Hexproof. And some of these are going to be very good, like Archetype of Courage, right? Gets all your creatures first strike.
Oh, Death Touch as well. Oof.
So all your creatures block forever, are impossible to block, can't be attacked basically without flyers.
Yeah.
You're worried about flyers, you can play Archetype of Imagination, an enchantment creature that gives all your stuff flying and takes flying away from all your opponents.
Yeah.
That means that now if you have any number of enchantment creatures out, it's going to be very hard to attack you because they are going to lose the creatures because of the Death Touch.
Yeah, they have to kill Xur.
Yeah. Aegis of the Gods is a really good one. 1 and white for a 2/1. You have hexproof. And because Xur gives the Aegis hexproof, it's really hard to get through to you because they have to kill Xur, then the Aegis, then you with the spell.
If they need to target you, yeah.
Yep. Nykthos Paragon is a 6-mana 4/6, but whenever you gain life, you may put a 1/1 counter on each creature you control. Oof. Do this only once each turn. Well, remember, all your stuff gets lifelink, all your enchantment creatures.
Yeah.
And then, of course...
by the way, if you have Archetype of Courage, first strike damage. Oh, no, I was going to say, because you could first strike, give it everything. But all your creatures have
Oh, right, you're right.
Yeah, it can't be like
double strike.
He hits you first and everyone gets buff and then hits you normally.
If you had double strike, it would work.
Yeah, double strike there. Yeah. There's like Conviction and whatever. There's a couple of mono white double strike cards.
And then, of course, the next category I'm calling Gods Help Us, because gods have indestructible.
Yeah.
But they don't, the Theros gods don't turn into creatures unless you have devotion high enough.
Or if you use Xur on them.
Yep. So if they are enchantments. So if you activate Xur and say, well, Heliod Suncrowned is now a creature regardless of my devotion. Now, Heliod will be a 3/3 because it will be a creature that's CMC that's power and toughness is equal to its mana value.
Oh, okay. It shrinks it.
Yeah, but that doesn't matter. Like now you've got an indestructible lifelink hexproof death touch, right? Which also has a very relevant ability. Heliod cares about life gain.
Right.
We'll put 1/1 counters on creatures when you gain life. So Heliod Suncrown seems very, very good. You don't have to put the Walking Ballista combo if you don't want to. You can. Thassa, God of the Sea.
Oh, it makes them unblockable, and that's pretty good too.
Yep.
Not that they're going to get blocked anyway.
Athreos gives them some amount of recursion. One thing I've learned from playing Athreos is you will get creatures back. People don't like to pay that 3 life. So you'll get your enchantments back if you've turned them into creatures. The gods are very good, but they're not super broken. Often you don't want your gods to turn into creatures because now they're susceptible to Path of Exiles and things like that.
Yeah.
It is better when the gods are just kind of incidentally, their abilities are not what you're building around. You're like, oh, the ability's good, but really it's indestructible, so now I don't care as much if they die.
Right. It's interesting.
Yeah, but it is an interesting tug and pull there. I don't think it's broken in any way.
Okay.
It's really, non-creature, non-aura where we get interesting. Right? Because this is stuff where it's like, okay, well, where is it interesting to make an enchantment into a creature or make it into a creature with Death Touch or something like that? Mm-hmm. And like Pestilence is very interesting to make into a creature with Death Touch.
So it becomes a 4/4.
Yep.
And it says at the end of turn, if there are no creatures, you sacrifice Pestilence. So it itself will stop it from being sacrificed now that it's a creature. And then you can pay a black and it deals 1 damage to each creature in each player.
So with Death Touch, 1 black.
Wipe the board.
However,
your stuff
kill
too.
Pestilence and Xur. So you need to, but you're in white. Maybe you can give Indestructible or something like that.
Yeah.
In which case, Pestilence will stick around. Also has lifelink. So
wait, Pestilence, activate it. Teferi's Protection.
Yeah. There you go.
I don't know about that.
You activate it like 16 times.
Yeah, there you go.
And then Teferi's Protection. Remember, has lifelink. So
Right, you're going to gain a ton of life.
yeah, although I guess maybe it won't when it resolves if you do the Teferi.
Oh, yeah, 'cause your life total
thing.
can't change?
And it won't have death touch at that
Yeah,
point.
yeah.
either.
You wanna do, like,
no,
one
because your
that-
stuff phases out, so Zer won't be there.
Oh, I see. Okay, never mind. Forget everything I said.
But give it indestructible.
Yeah, there you go.
Right? Give it, have Avacyn out or something like that.
Yeah.
Withering Wisps is just another pestilence. Light Minefield, I think, is a little bit better, although will be annoying. It's 2 whites for enchantment. Whenever one or more creatures attack, Light Minefield deals damage to each of the creatures equal to the number of attacking creatures.
Oh, so it has death touch, so no matter what, I see.
Anyone attacks, the creatures they're attacking with are going to die.
That's fun.
That counts you too, though, so not the best. I was thinking, like, well, okay, what makes Pestilence, Withering Wisps, and Light Minefield good? Because, yes, if you get Avacyn out and have Indestructible, you'll be able to do this stuff. But you have Avacyn out.
Right.
Like, Pestilence with Death Touch is a little cute at that point. You've cast an 8-mana Angel.
Yeah.
So I thought, I was looking for something that gives protection from the color. So Righteous War actually seems pretty good. It's 1, a white, and a black for an enchantment. All creatures you control gain protection from black, and all creatures...
black.
So all white creatures get protection from black, and all black creatures get protection from white.
Okay.
So now you could Pestilence, and Zer wouldn't die.
Because it has pro black.
Yeah, and you
white.
could Light Minefield, and again, you could attack with some of your creatures.
Okay.
Because your black ones would be protection from white.
Is this from Visions?
Sure. Yeah, I think
Wow.
it is. Yeah.
What a classic set.
So that's kind of a cheap way. Maybe if you had enough Pestilence style effects, you could, have those kind of work.
Yeah.
And you're in white and black, so you can maybe, tutor for the Righteous War. Again, we don't generally like tutors ourselves, but people do play them.
Okay.
Speaking of double strike, Jimmy, Duelist Heritage.
There you
seems
go.
Very good in this deck.
Yeah. So 2 in the white, whenever one or more creatures have attack, you may have target attacking creature gain double strike until end of turn. So that seems pretty cool.
Yeah, Duelist Heritage itself could become a creature, could attack, could get double strike, has death touch.
Lifelink.
Yeah.
That's all.
And you also get to give it to your opponents when you feel like, hey, if you attack...
Oh, interesting. I'll
if you
give it double
attack-
strike.
Yep. And then I think this is just kind of good with enchantments that have an effect but otherwise wouldn't do much.
Mm-hmm.
Because I'm thinking of how this game's going to play out, and I think a lot of it is going to be you're going to have some enchantments that are good but not insane. It's not obvious that you wouldn't be willing to have them be blockers with death touch in front of your opponent's creatures, but you haven't activated Zer yet. You just have the mana up.
Oh, so you can just wait.
So if I have Blind Obedience or Confounding Conundrum up and 2 mana, and it's your turn and you have an attack, you can't attack me.
Right.
Because it's pretty obvious that Confounding Conundrum was probably worth trading for your Timna or something, right? So, that's a card that when it enters the battlefield draws a card. It's a 2-mana artifact, 2-mana enchantment. Whenever a land enters the battlefield under an opponent's control, if that player had another land enter the battlefield under control this turn, they return a land they control to its owner's hand. So it just
nice.
stops fetch land, stops all this green ramp stuff, right? Which you're not going to have access to because you're not in those colors. And that card's not always good, but it cantripped and now can turn into a Death Touch lifelink or hexproof.
Yeah.
And also, if it is annoying to your opponent, if they're playing the Soul of Windgrace deck, well, it's really hard to get rid of Confounding Conundrum because I can give it hexproof at instant speed.
For 2 mana. Same with the very annoying enchantments with Rhystic Studies, Smothering Tithe. So you just say, someone goes to remove it, turn it into a creature, has hexproof, bounces, or fizzles the spell.
So as long as you have 2 mana up, they just can't try stuff against you, right? Can't attack you.
Yeah.
Can't try to remove stuff. Super annoying. Enchanted Evening seems like a shoe in this deck. All permanents are enchantments in addition to their other types. It means at any
interesting.
point, just because of the hexproof. I mean, that's...
Don't turn your lands into enchantment creatures because they come 0/0s and die.
Yeah, that's a good point. But your lands are not usually getting targeted, right?
Yeah.
So it really shows, I think, that the hexproof is really the most important part of this whole thing that Zer does. Mm-hmm. Because just making it hard to kill things is annoying and tough. And enchantments in particular are already hard to kill.
Yeah.
Can often take over the game. And now you make them hexproof.
Yeah, especially if they waste a removal spell on it too. That's rough.
Speaking of removal, white has all these enchantment-based removals cards like Grasp of Fate, Cast Out, all these Oblivion Ring variants. They've even got board wipes. Out of Time. Have you played against Out of Time yet?
No.
Oh my god, this card is
so annoying,
good.
right? Yeah.
It's 1 white for an enchantment. When it enters the battlefield, untap all creatures, then phase them out until end of time leaves the battlefield. Put a time counter on out of time for each creature phased out this way, and then it has vanishing. At the beginning of your upkeep, remove a time counter from this enchantment. When the last one is removed, sacrifice it.
But they could have like 15 time counters on
Even 5 is just like, it's over. You're never, unless you destroy it, it's not ending for the whole game, and it gets commanders.
Oh,
because
right.
it's phase out, and phasing out is not something where you can put it into your command zone.
They have to be able to remove it at instant
So when
speed.
somebody out of times and you're like playing Corvold or something, your deck's just turned off.
Yeah, interesting.
So this is a way to give out of time hexproof. Mm-hmm. You know, pretty brutal. Consulate Crackdown is a sort
Similar.
of artifact version of out of time. Not as good. Out of time is insane if you've played with it or against it. If you haven't, take a look at it. And then, of course, all the Pillow Fort stuff, Sphere of Safety, Propaganda, Ghostly Prison. And this is where we start to get into the realm of like the powerful version of this deck, I think, is powerful but mean. It's kind
Control.
of like, control and stacks, right?
Yeah.
And a stasis that has hexproof is just
That's backbreaking.
yeah, that's just brutal. Rising Waters is it's like a winter orb kind of that you could give hexproof to. Aura of Silence give it hexproof. Stony Silence give it hexproof. Frozen Ether. This could be a version of the deck that's just built around stacks and giving hexproof to the enchantments that they would otherwise try to remove.
That's brutal.
Yeah. And I think that's probably the most powerful version. And then you just win with the stasises and the Aura of Silence is like eventually attacking because you turn them into creatures.
Yep.
So normally you would have to like play all that stuff and then find a way to win. And this one you're just like, well, I'll just turn them into creatures and win when none of my opponents can do anything because it can't untap their lands or whatever.
Yeah. Is that why you didn't build it?
Yep. It was all removal spells, and then I was like, well, I can't play any of the stack spells.
I was gonna say, and that would be pretty annoying if you land like 3 powerful enchantments that no one can touch.
Yeah, I just found myself built, and the Pestilence thing, I don't want to do that on game nights, like,
No.
right?
Yeah.
So it's just like, well, none of the cool things that this commander can do are things I want to do on the show. Anyway.
All right, that's N through Z. That is the second half of the multicolored set here, not including the monocolors or the uncommons, and not the box toppers. Those are still to come. But we get to recap a little bit here and talk about our favorite and our most powerful commanders that we consider from this episode specifically.
Yeah, let's first, what is our favorite commander? Just one from this episode. Jimmy, what's yours?
I really like Shanid, Sleeper Scourge. It's either that or Rith, because I love dragons. But Shanid is just every single legendary thing draws you a card. That's pretty darn good. Seems like Mardu needs a little bit of help, too. And I think this is a great entry into the Mardu sort of world.
Yeah, and I actually like that the Menace thing kind of gives you some cards that you haven't played with that, it's maybe not 20 new cards, but like 7, 8 cards that are like, oh, that's Menace Tribal. I can put these in. They make sense.
Yeah, and it doesn't totally take away from the deck's power at all
to
do so. Yeah, I like that.
For me, I think Ratadrabik seems cool. I think there's some interesting things you can do with it. I wish there was a few more good ETB and Dies legendaries, but I think there's
over
enough.
time, you never know.
And I think there's enough that you can do some cool stuff and it'll be fun. As long as you don't put Sidisi in the deck. I think I would have to build it without Sidisi because it becomes
Just
too
so good, yeah.
Yeah, too good with Sidisi, yeah.
Most powerful commanders from this episode, I am going to go with Varric because I want to fetch and get tons of lands. I think that's pretty good.
That alone.
Especially in white and black. You've never seen something like that before.
It's funny how just that, if it didn't even interact with creature activated abilities at all, if it was just the fetch line thing, it would be very powerful.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
especially with brought backs, Avenge Reclamation, all that stuff. You could ramp out faster than most decks, I think.
Yeah, I think that's true.
And it's a 3-mana commander, so you can get that pretty early.
Yeah, not a ton, I think, on this episode that are like really high power level. I didn't feel like anything is like a shoe in CDH. Maybe Sten is up there, but that's
Sten's up there, but yeah.
Just because you can CDH shell any 2 CMC
and it gives
legendary
you a
creature
discount
that's got
on
blue in
artifacts.
it.
Yeah, so it's all kind of there.
I think Zur maybe is what I would say, just because the stacks version of Zur, and I'm not advocating building that, but if you did, I think that would be quite powerful and might be up there.
Especially if you optimized it for sure.
Yeah. All right, to the listeners, what new commander out of this bunch are you the most excited to build? What sweet tech did you see for any of these that you think we missed or,
Didn't mention. There's a lot. I'm sure we missed something.
Yeah.
So let us know in the comments. You can tag us on Twitter. You can post wherever. We'll see it. And we'll make sure to read it.
All right, make sure that if you want to get your hands on any of these cards, any of the ones from Dominaria United or any of the cards that we were talking about that go inside the decks, that you go to channelfireball.com/command. Your Magic players, you're going to buy Magic cards. You may as well use our affiliate link. When you do it, you'll be supporting the content you enjoy while you get the cards for the decks that you want to build. Of course, Dominaria United, sealed product, bundles, collectors, boosters, all that stuff is up for sale right now. channelfireball.com/command, the best place to go to get all your Magic stuff.
And of course, when you get those cards, sleeve them up, keep them protected. Josh and I have been trusting Ultra Pro for almost our entire lives. I still have plastic top loaders from when I was like 10 years old, and they still function. So Ultra Pro.
Yeah, I have I have a Michael Jordan rookie card.
What?
You know?
Nice.
Yeah.
In an Ultra Pro case, and it's just been chilling. That's awesome.
Since I was like, I don't know, 8.
That's amazing. Ultra Pro, they've been making the best in the business for a very long time. They know exactly what they're doing, and it's going to come with the art and the styling that you love, whether you want theme sleeves or a playmat or a wall scroll or whatever it is. You can go to ultrapro.com/command. They have a brand new shop with tons of deals all the time. You can buy any of the new stuff that's out. You can get some cool secret lair playmats with art that you're never going to see printed anywhere else. Whatever it is, you are going to find it on the Ultra Pro website, ultrapro.com/command. Check it out. And of course, if you go to your local game store and see Ultra Pro product there as well, do the same thing. Support us by getting some of that stuff there.
All right, no incept this episode because it has been so long, but we can't go without thanking our amazing team here at Command Zone. Damon Lenz, Ashlyn Rose, Craig Blanchett, Arthur Meadowcroft, Lady Danger, Manson Lung, Josh Murphy, Jake Boss, Patrick Nan, Jordan Pridgeon, Sam Waldo, Gaurav Galati, Jamie Block, Mitch Trafford, and Evan Limburger. And special shout out to Truck Ty, who helps us compile all the research for episodes like these.
And big shout out to Jeffrey Palmer, who occasionally does the living card animations behind us here on set, but they do start the show at our website, youtube.com/The Command Zone Podcast. You can also find Jeffrey online at Living Cards MTG.
I like how you slipped our website in there.
Yeah. Thanks, Susan Wojcicki. It's my website now.
All right, we got probably two episodes talking about the box toppers because there's so many. We've got an episode talking about the uncommon commanders, the monocolored commanders, and then, of course, an episode talking about all the cards that go in the year 99. There's a lot of coverage for Dominaria United coming up. Make sure you subscribe, and we will see you very soon.
Bye-bye.
Peace.
For your attention. For further inquiries, send an email to commandcast@rocketjump.com or ask us on Twitter @JFWong and @JoshLeeQuai. See you later, alligator.
Greetings, humans.